Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. If you could join me in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please pray with me if you'd like to. Dear Lord, as we come together today, we mourn the loss of one of our own, St. Lucie County Sheriff Deputy Detective Mock. We ask that you pray for his family while they go through this tough time. And Lord, we ask you to continue reminding us why we serve. Guide us as we make decisions, ensuring that we take everyone and everything into consideration. We ask you to bless today's meeting, the residents of St. Lucie County, and the board as they conduct the important business that's before them today. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to quickly recess into our special district meetings and start with mosquito control.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call the Mosquito Control District meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, please move forward. Seeing no movement, we'll close public comment. Come back to approval of minutes. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I just stood up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go back to public comment.
Larry, do you want to clarify? This is
We're-
mosquito control. If you're here to comment on something with the regular meeting, you would want to wait right now. We've recessed the regular meeting and we are in mosquito control board. So if it's something pertaining to mosquito control board, then,
No.
okay. Sorry, Larry.
So go back to approval of the minutes. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is consent. Anyone wishing to pull? If not, need a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing on the regular agenda. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go over to our erosion district.
We will now come to order as the erosion district. If there's any public comment for the erosion district, please come up to the podium. Seeing no one moving forward, we'll close the public comment and move on to the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion for the approval of the September 16th minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. If I can get a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. There are no regular agenda items. However, I would like to invite our port director up at this time. I've received a lot of complaints, well, not complaints, a lot of people noticing that the beach sand is now gone from Fort Pierce South Beach. It is, and I keep getting asked, what about that? Are you just going to keep replenishing? So I've asked Mr. Revord if he could come up and just give us a brief about the T-groins. We're looking into other options and where we're at as far as board discussion, approval, moving forward, that sort of thing.
Yes, Chairman Klasmy, members of the Erosion District Board, Joshua Revord, the Director of Port Inland and Beaches for St. Lucie County. To your question, Commissioner Klasby, there's not one surefire way to address the erosion that we have immediately downdrift to Fort Pierce Inlet. This has been a chronic issue for many, many years. It's the result of the stabilization of our inlet and those federal features, both the depth, the width, and those jetties. And so we're chronically trying to address the deficit that that inlet impacts on that particular beach. We have addressed this historically through nourishment, which is the most surefire way to provide nature with the resource it needs to combat erosion. And we have done that with the Army Corps' help for many, many years. A reason why we've continued that relationship is they pay a lion's share of the cost. So any given project, they pay up to 78% of the total project cost because of the impacts associated with the federal inlet. Long term, as you know, and many of the constituents know, we have been working with the Army Corps of Engineers to implement a new trajectory for that particular beach. And those structures that you referenced, the T-groin structures, we have been working for the better part of 15 years to not only maintain the Corps' involvement in the implementation of those structures, but to continue our relationship for the next 50 years. It's essential that we keep the Army Corps of Engineers and the state of Florida as partners as we try to address this. Clearly, the biggest hurdle there is to keep the Army Corps of Engineers at the helm. Without them, the cost would be substantially too expensive for us to address on our own. And since it's impacts from the federal inlet that impact this beach, nor should we have to address those on our own. The status of that project, we submitted that project feasibility study to the Assistant Secretary of the Army's Office Civil Works in 2017. Because of the process and procedure of the federal government, it took a variety of years before we got into a water resource bill to actually authorize the project. That was in 2022, the caveat being that it was a conditional authorization. For the last 4 years, we've been trying to address those conditions, and our report and our response to those conditions has been submitted back to the ASAs, and it's being reviewed today. We've been working with Representative Mass' office and with others to ensure that we have the proper funding for the next phase, which would be the design phase. Our hope is that by the end of the year, we get approval from the Army Corps of Engineers, the ASA's office, and headquarters to move that project forward. And those structures, again, will provide us with some relief, not complete relief. The idea here is that those T-groins will allow for us to impact the incoming wave energy, which reduces the amount of energy that makes it to the shoreline, which reduces the amount of sand that moves, and then the T portion of those groins allows for us to retain it for longer periods of time. So the hope is, instead of every other year placing sand at the frequency we have in the last 20 years, that we go to an every 4-year schedule. So those are things that we hope to accomplish in the future. The good thing for us right now is we do have full backing from the state and from the feds to continue to address the beach as it currently exists. And I do want to remind everyone about this beach is that if we don't place sand, the sand that was at that beach doesn't move to the next beach, doesn't move to the next beach, and so on and so forth. So not addressing the sand deficit immediately downdrift of the beach becomes a chronic issue, and those things that we experience immediately downdrift of the inlet perpetuate further and further down our coastline. So through strategic placement of sand, yes, it seems like it does wash away, but it's actually feeding our beaches to the south. And so St. Lucie County is in a great position because we manage essentially only about 7 miles of beach. And when we look to the north and look to our south, they manage a substantial more in terms of their coastline. So just wanted to remind everyone of those facts. So that relationship needs to be preserved, and we'll continue to watch the erosion at the beach and do our best to abate it through this next 2 or 3 months. And we do have a federal shore protection project on the horizon, and hopefully that will come to fruition before any damage is done.
And just to remind the viewing public, the last beach renourishment we did was a truck hauling, which was substantially less than a normal traditional renourishment. Is that correct?
That is correct. We had a choice to make. The board decided to move forward with a truck haul this spring. Good thing we did, because that fill allowed for us to get to where we are today. One could imagine that if we didn't place that, where we would be today. Interesting enough, the consent agenda, we were able to get 100% reimbursement from the state for that truck haul. So we're in a very good position. In the event we have to do something here in the next couple weeks, we can provide those spot treatments to preserve the park and get us to the next federal shore protection project, which should commence in February of next year.
All right, thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the erosion district meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you. And with that, we'll come back over to our regular meeting, and I'll need an approval of the agenda with the additions, deletions, and revisions that you received.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There are no presentations. Now I'll go ahead and open it up for general public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board at this time?
My name is Chrissy Thanis. You need my address? 133 Northwest Magnolia Lakes Boulevard, Port St. Lucie 34986. Good evening, County Board members, Commissioners. At the last meeting, it was clear as day that 3 of you said nothing was wrong with Charlie Kirk's hateful and prejudiced statements. You said his words were taken out of context. That's not leadership, that's denial. If you can't recognize how cruel and divisive his words are, you're turning your back on people you're supposed to serve. Let's stop pretending this is about context. His record speaks for itself, mocking and demeaning people because of their race, faith, or who they love. That kind of talk doesn't bring people together, it rips communities apart. It normalizes hate, and when public officials excuse that, it gives permission to others to follow. We're already drowning in too much hate in this country. Don't add to it here in St. Lucie County. Recently, we learned that a Telegram group of chat tied to young Republican leaders ages 24 to 40 contained more than 3,000 pages of vile, hateful, and even violent messages. 3,000 pages of racism, homophobia, and open calls for violence. Is this what the next generation of Republican leadership looks like? This has become the Republican Party. I ask yourselves this: what kind of president makes a mock video of himself portrayed as a king, flying a plane and dumping waste on millions of peaceful protesters simply because they oppose him? That's not humor, that's contempt for very people he swore to serve. It shows exactly what happens when power is worshipped instead of public service. You proudly said you're Republicans, that's fine. This isn't about party labels, but party loyalty doesn't excuse bad judgment. Once you're elected, you work for everyone, Democrats, Independents, Republicans alike. You work for the families who voted for you and the ones who didn't. We want to see you get back to some normal behavior towards people who don't vote like you. The constant us versus them politics has to stop. Step out of your bubble, stop listening only to people who agree with you. Go out into the neighborhoods you represent and hear from those who feel unseen and unheard. Talk to teachers, workers, seniors, young people who just want a future without fear or hate. And please stop taking your talking points from Tallahassee and Washington. This is St. Lucie County. We are better than this. We are neighbors. We are a community that should stand for decency, fairness, and respect, not for the loudest voice of division. So I ask you, lead with courage, not cowardice. Choose empathy over ideology, and remember, history will remember whether you stood up to hate or stood by in silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board under public comment?
I have a list of stuff that was said, and I want to just make sure that each one of them see that so that they realize what's being out there.
Okay, seeing no movement, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And we have one proclamation this evening for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Resolution number 25212, a resolution proclaiming the month of October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in St. Lucie County, Florida. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of St. Lucie County, Florida has made the following determinations. Domestic violence is a serious, widespread issue that affects individuals in every community regardless of age, race, income, or education level, and leaves a lasting impact on survivors, families, and communities. More than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States have experienced physical violence, threats, or abuse from an intimate partner during their lifetimes. The effects of domestic violence extend beyond the immediate harm caused to survivors, impacting children, workplaces, health systems, and entire communities. Safety, support, solidarity is the theme for Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2025, uniting communities nationwide and here on the Treasure Coast and standing #with survivors. Safe Space is the only certified domestic violence center serving Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties, providing life-saving services such as 24/7 shelter, a confidential hotline, legal advocacy, children's programs, and financial empowerment to help survivors achieve safety and stability. It is vital to recognize the importance of safe space work and to encourage community members, employers, faith leaders, and civic organizations to take action by raising awareness, learning the signs of abuse, and offering compassionate support to survivors. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of St. Lucie County, Florida, that this board does hereby proclaim the month of October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in St. Lucie County, Florida, and encourages all residents to join safe space in supporting survivors, honoring their courage, and committing to end domestic violence, passed and duly adopted this 21st day of October 2025.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This evening, we have Amy Cooper, the CFO of Indian River County Sheriff's Office, with us to accept the proclamation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and community members. My name is Amy Cooper. I am the President of the Safe Space Board. On behalf of Safe Space, everyone standing with me today, and survivors of domestic violence, I want to thank you for recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This proclamation sends a powerful message to survivors across our community that says, you are not alone. Domestic abuse can be found in every neighborhood, workplace, and school, and yet survivors feel very alone. Every statistic represents a person, a parent, a child, or a neighbor who deserves to be safe in their own home. Safe Space is the only state-certified domestic violence center serving St. Lucie, Indian River, and Martin counties. Our crisis hotline averages between 250 to 275 calls every month. Last year, we provided a variety of services to 891 survivors of domestic violence, and 165 of them were children. 378 people stayed in our safe homes, and we provided legal advocacy and representation in court to 359 survivors in our community. We are talking about almost 900 people. 900 people who found us, and 900 people are safer because of the support of this community. This year's domestic violence awareness theme is safety, support, and solidarity, and it reminds us that everyone has a role to play. Safety means making sure survivors have a place to turn 24 hours a day. Support means listening without judgment and connecting friends, family, or colleagues to resources. Solidarity means standing together, wearing purple, raising awareness, and ensuring survivors know this community is with them. We want to invite the community to get involved throughout the month of October. To learn more about our events, the services we provide, or ways to help, please visit safespacefl.org or follow Safe Space on social media. Thank you for using your platform to shine a light on this issue and for standing with Safe Space and with survivors. Together, we can create a Treasure Coast free from domestic violence.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do. If you want to come up and we'll do a group photo.
Everybody's eyes. Look this way. Yeah.
Okay, and there are no approval of any minutes needed. Consent agenda, is there anything anyone wants to pull? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Motion to approve?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, skipping right ahead. Look how quick. We didn't take a bet on what time we were going to get out tonight, did we? All right, so going into our first public hearing, this is going to be for Tidewater 2. Good evening, Corey and Thad.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners, Madam Chair. For the record, Thad Crow, Senior Planner, Planning Development Services. Starting off with the required public notice for this item, the property was posted, notice was sent out, mail notice was sent out, and an advertisement in the paper was also run as required. Tidewater 2, this gives you kind of an idea of what's around there. It's an area in transition. On the right-hand side, you can see the US 1 corridor. And I found out something interesting when I looked at this earlier. If you looked at US 1, the first 5 letters are sushi. And at the time I looked at it, I was hungry, so it just struck a chord with me. I apologize. In any case, this is kind of a large vacant tract of land in an area that's being gradually transitioning to more suburban use. If you start at US 1 and work your way westward, you'll see the intensive uses along US 1 give way to larger residential lots moving towards the river, the St. Lucie River. In terms of future land use, that transition is reflected in the future land use, which is commercial along US 1, moving to RU, residential urban, which is 5 units per acre, and finally to RS, residential suburban, which is 2 units per acre. So you see that gradual transition to lower density, which makes a lot of sense given the environmental situation, the river, and just the general character of the area. Also reflected in the zoning map, CG, commercial zoning along 1, RS2, 2 units per acre, and RS3, and then transitioning to the AR1, basically 1 unit per acre, kind of a remnant ag zoning. It's a map that shows some context. Fort Pierce is to the north. You can see the kind of green striped area. What's interesting is the extent of undeveloped land. This is representative of an area that is undergoing transition. And it's challenging for the county, of course, to handle this transition when you have existing neighborhoods and everyone's affected by it. But essentially, you can see the undeveloped lands that are around this property. If you look at the very south, Eden Oaks, approved along the south of Sager. If you look at also north of that, Land America, another proposed multifamily development that is kind of dormant now. The US 1 character itself is fairly intensive, lots of auto dealers, storage units, some medical uses, car washes. So it's kind of not really intensive commercial, but it's got some fairly intensive elements. So a snapshot of what is proposed and what is there. If you look at the west, the upper left, this is proposed for single family. 74 new single-family detached 60-foot wide lots, also stormwater ponds, an amenity parcel with the pool and cabana, landscape buffers, a conservation area along Oleander, about 5 acres, and trails. The eastern portion is the new townhome component, Tidewater 2, 94 proposed new units. 60 of those lots are 20 feet by 80 feet, and 34 of those lots are 24 by 80 feet. Again, stormwater pond, amenity parcel with a pool, and landscape buffers. The lower right is Tidewater 1. There are 100 approved and existing, mostly existing townhomes. The development is almost complete. The southern edge of it is building out now as we speak. This is Tidewater 1 as of last week. So you can see it's there's people who have moved in and living there, and it's already established neighborhood. Another context map, I think we really have heard a lot about compatibility issues, and I think when you look at the lot size, it's kind of all over the map, but there are a number of large lots there, 1 to 5 acres, for example, 57 parcels. 19 parcels greater than 5 acres. I guess the highest, the top, the median, more or less, is the 0.2 to 0.5 acres, around the 8, 9, 10,000, 15,000 square feet, 323 parcels. So that's kind of the majority. The average parcel size is almost a half acre, 0.4 acres. So if you're looking for kind of a mean and a median, it's right in there around your 8, 10,000 square feet. But there are a number of large lots in the area that remain. Proposed lots, again, the 60-foot wide lots on the right-hand side, single family, that's a 7,200 square foot lot, more or less a fifth of an acre. And you look at the townhome types, standard townhome lots, 1,600 square feet, 1,920 square feet, narrow lots. Setbacks are the table down to the left, front setbacks of 22 feet for both housing types, rear setback of 10 feet for the single family. Townhome is 8 feet, side is 5 feet, and for the single family, and of course, there's no setbacks between townhomes themselves. Side street for the single family is 10 feet and townhomes 15 feet. Setbacks for accessory structures is 3 feet for all property types. Open space is an important component. I think more and more we look to see what the applicants provide to preserve the kind of character of this part of the county, White City, and some of the beautiful trees and open space that we have in this area. They are required to have 35% open space. They have provided 44% open space, so they are well in excess of what is required. You can see, we'll talk about how that breaks down a little bit, but a lot of this is tied up in the preserve along Oleander. So that will be kind of a natural vegetation preserve area, so that when you're traveling along Oleander, or if you dare to bicycle or walk along that street, you will see a lot of preserved trees and native vegetation. The exotics will be removed, and it will be kind of an asset to both Oleander and to this property. Other open space areas, talked about the preserve, and that takes up about 30% of open space and about 13% of the site. Passive parks, which will be explored more in the final site plan process, are another 5 acres or so. Again, almost 30% of the open space and 13% of the site. Of course, you've got lakes, retention lakes as part of the open space, perimeter buffers, lake shorelines, and recreation areas. All in all, the pervious surface is about 2/3 of the property, impervious, of course, 1/3. So there is a pretty high rate of pervious surface. Buffers are widely ranging. Really just a 15-foot buffer is required in a situation like this. What they provided is much more than this in some areas. Along Oleander especially, we have between 120 feet and 360 feet buffers along Oleander, which is fairly impressive. Other buffers, the applicant has sought to provide a buffering for existing single-family homes. You can see ranging from 25 feet to 50 feet, and I'm sorry, to 100 feet. So there has been an effort to keep those buffers in place and screen out the proposed development. Here's an example of a buffer. Typically, what we see here is there's mostly a fence in that buffer, sometimes on top of a berm, as you can see. The berm is outlined in the lower right-hand corner where that will take place. On both sides of that fence is a hedge, and then we have shade trees spaced every 30 feet. The intent of this is to create kind of an orderly screening mechanism to provide for softening of the proposed development. Littoral and upland section, you can see the plantings that are pretty standard as required by code, with the littoral plantings along the shoreline, and then upland transition plantings, trees and shrubs. Something that we've really been seeing a lot, and I think it's a very positive thing, is street trees to shade the sidewalks in the streets and to screen out the buildings as well. These are generally spaced every 20 to 30 feet. You can see they're both in the townhome section and the single-family section. This site does have a plethora of trees. There are many native trees left. There are also invasive species as well, but this graphic kind of gives you a sense of the tree cover, which is pretty constant. Avoidance and minimization is an important part of our resource protection standards in terms of native vegetation standards, and it's important to emphasize this. The removal plan for native vegetation must demonstrate that effective efforts have been made to microsite impervious surfaces to avoid or minimize impacts of such vegetation. In this case, you see it's very impactful. Just 17% of these native species are preserved, 50% are removed, and 33% are mitigated. So this would be a pretty heavily impacted site as presented. We've been closely working with the applicant to try to see how we can improve this, how we can make this a better project to preserve trees. I think we've made some progress. The applicant will be speaking to that as well. We looked at possibilities of, for example, where these cul-de-sacs, dead-end streets are, where you only have lots on one side of the street, for example. There is lots of opportunities, and we're just potential opportunities for more tree preservation in these areas, because you don't have the loading on both sides of the street in terms of lots. So this is just one idea of possibly how to preserve more trees. I think one of the most important things we've seen with this development is that they've gone to 60-foot lots, and I think that has made a lot of difference. That would make a lot of difference. You've got a little bit more room to work with to save trees, preserve trees, and plant trees. Something we like to bring up, and it's not really a very comparable situation, but it could be in certain cases. Oak Alley, you're probably familiar with this subdivision off 25th Street. These are wider lots. They're almost 100 feet wide in some cases, but this development establishes essentially tree easements between the houses where homeowners are required to preserve trees. And when you look at what's on the ground, it's a very pleasant, shaded, attractive environment. I think it's reflected in the property values and people's appreciation of their neighborhood. Transportation, a really important topic, of course. The TIR for the project projected about 1,400 daily trips, and of these, 110 are peak hour in the AM and 138 PM peak hour trips. The intersection analysis looked at Midway and Oleander, which is a signalized intersection, Easy Street and US 1, also a signalized intersection, Kitterman and Oleander, and Sunshine Boulevard and US 1 for U-turns. US 1 has been definitely transformed. I think DOT has taken great pains, as they have in so many other areas, to put in medians and to control that turning movement for safety purposes. So what you see is a lot of folks making these wide U-turns, turn around and come back, and it's just a way of life on US 1 and some of these other roads. You really have to kind of overshoot and come back, and in DOT's mind, and I think they're probably right, it's a safer model than just turning in front of fast-moving traffic. The TIR determined that these intersections are expected to operate at LOSD. That's on a scale of A through F, where F is failing and A is perfect. We don't see much of that. LSD or better. LOSD, that sounded wrong. Except for the only LOSD we had was the Sunshine Boulevard and US 1 U-turn lane. That is functioning at LOSE, so it's close to failing. It's not quite there, so technically it's not failing, but it's getting close. But the applicant, TR, did point out that these queuing vehicles, essentially stacking in that U-turn lane, would not exceed the turn lane capacity. And there's another U-turn opportunity, so if you see that stacked up and full, you can continue to go up to Ulrich, where you can make a U-turn. The TIR determined no warrant for Oleander turn lanes, and the Tidewater 1 has a southbound turn lane that's already been constructed. It's on the ground. There's not trip volume issues, but we have pointed out, I think, in the staff report that in the area there's a lot of issues. We're concerned about some of the narrow road widths. I mean, an extreme example is the Sager, which is really just one vehicle can travel. If it meets another vehicle, one of them has to get off the road, essentially. Ulrich is another issue. It's a substandard in terms of width. It's a residential street. The traffic is kind of forced through between a US 1 and Oleander, which is a concern. So I think that, obviously, the more development takes place here, the more pressure will be put on these roads weren't meant to accommodate traffic, to accommodate through traffic. We have to look at evaluate the projects in terms of what is set forth in methodology or adopted methodology. So, we kind of have blinders on to a certain degree, but the transportation essentially looks at capacity, and that's kind of a model that has always been used. But I think we like to point out that there are safety issues as well due to the lack of sidewalks on Oleander, due to the narrow road widths, and due to the difficulty of traffic to kind of move through this area. This is not a very good exhibit that I did that shows some of these intersections. I think you can see moving from the north up there to Sunshine Boulevard. These intersections are not full intersections. For example, it's right turn only from Sunshine. There are some turn lanes into these streets. The project itself, Tidewater 1, again, has a southbound turn lane that relieves a little bit of that stress. But then you have to go down to Easy Street for the only real signalized intersection. Sager, of course, has a right-only lane. The middle picture is the entrance to Tidewater 1. You can see the green bike lane there, and you can see the turn lane. Not a very long turn lane, but having been over there and observed some of the traffic, you have some in and out traffic with the townhomes, but it's not that heavy. But you can see the character of US 1. That median is kind of omnipresent. It's there, and it's an obstacle, and it kind of forces the traffic to move through and come back and turn around. I think this is a great picture of Sager because it does show, it gives you some perspective. I like the tire track in the middle of the road. That says a lot. Oleander on the right, looking north. Again, no sidewalks, narrow shoulders. Having looked at the signs, if you pull off the shoulder too much, you run the risk of potentially getting stuck if it's been raining a lot. Ulrich Road, again, no sidewalks on that at the bottom. Relatively narrow street, and it is a residential street, so it's not intended for through traffic, really. Trip distribution, understanding that when this project commenced, it was the townhome and the single-family components were connected. They are not connected anymore. The single-family component goes out to Oleander, the townhome component goes out to US 1. So the Oleander traffic splits. Most folks are headed up north on Midway Road. About 60% of that traffic, 40% goes south, according to the TIR. And I need to stop and say that we did have an independent evaluation, a third-party evaluation of their TIR. There was some back and forth. They were required to make some amendments and changes. However, we did get, this is certified by our third-party reviewer based on the methodology that we are required to use. The townhome traffic's evenly split. They're half of them are going north and half of them are going south on US 1. Stormwater, I think that what we've heard a lot from the residents and folks that live around there in this part of White City is that there are some stormwater problems. I'm not going to say really a lack of maintenance, but it has been an issue, especially with the increasing frequency of storms. The drainage pretty much goes west to the river. You can see those blue lines there, but the applicant is proposing a new control structure at Oleander and where the development is. And the ditch, the existing ditch, would be cleaned and improved to help with capacity. So how is this supported in terms of our criteria for consideration? First of all, it doesn't maximize the density. RU, future land use, allows up to 5 units per acre. The project density overall is 3.9. That's down from the 4.4. The single family component itself is down, I believe, to 2.2. This is in the urban service area. And again, it does respect the transition of density from US 1 to the west to Oleander. There is that transition with the townhome lots, the denser townhome lots, giving way to the 60-foot wide single family detached lots. The 5.1 native tree preservation area, I think, is important as a supportive element. And there are amenities to serve the residents in terms of the pools, the cabanas. I think that they've done a good job, the applicant, of an off-street trail system, taking advantage of these passive parks and pocket parks and linking them up with trails so that people don't just walk along the sidewalk, but they have basically off-street trails to enjoy as well. These short blocks make this community more walkable. There's more opportunities to turn here, walk around instead of long blocks to walk on. And again, the 44.1% open space does exceed the 35% minimum by quite some. It's important to compare what they came in with and where they are now. And you can see that if you go down to the bottom, essentially, the total units They started out with 191 units. They came down to 168 units. That's a 12% reduction. Most of that reduction was in the single-family section. You can see they went down from 91 to 74 lots, which is about a 19% decrease, and a smaller decrease in the townhome units from 100 to 94. Density started out about 4.4 units per acre. It's now down below 4. So I think that as we went through the process, you did see that kind of lessening of density and intensity in the project. Now, there are some problems, I think, when we look at the criteria we use to consider these. We talked about the substandard area roadways, how these roads were not intended to move a lot of traffic. There's no sidewalks to speak of. We're putting more units in homes in an area where people are constricted in their ability to move around, whether that be by car, bicycle, or walking. Removing half of the protected tree, DBH doesn't comply with the avoidance and minimization, I think. That's important to note. There has been progress made on that with the preserve and with other measures. A tool that you have, which you've used with other projects, is it's appropriate for you to request density reductions when it makes sense, when you've got the transportation impacts, the tree impacts, and we have seen some of that now. They've been moving in that direction. We did receive some letters of opposition from the White City Improvement Club and some citizens, and essentially, if I can paraphrase them a little bit, I think the concerns were about density and just the sheer size of the development compared to what was around it, the clearance of the natural features, especially the trees, the impact on the wildlife, which will be displaced, lack of the fit to the White City character, which is a historic character of White City. People had some issues with cookie-cutter type developments. Strain on the infrastructure, especially Oleander. I think that a lot of people have a lot of concern about Oleander. It's already kind of a dangerous road, and it's not going to be improved. It really can't be improved to a certain degree. There can be some things done, but it is constrained. And the flooding problems, of course, have come up. So at the Planning and Zoning Commission, this body recommended denial on a 4-3 vote. They made the following findings. The project lacks continuity with the neighborhood, does not have adequate stormwater mitigation, contributes to an unsafe traffic pattern, and the Planning and Zoning Commission has been saying this a lot lately. There's a need to preserve the quality of life in the county. In closing, staff recommends the board evaluate this proposed rezoning, the associated preliminary development plan, and the standards of review, and approve a modified plan that features greater tree preservation, lot size transition, and we do recommend the following conditions, which I'll go through pretty quickly. ERD, pretty standard conditions, environmental impact, finalized tree mitigation plan, and this is pretty specific. Revise the quantity of green cocoa plums listed within the upland transition section. I'm not sure what a cocoa plum is. I'm not from South Florida, but it sounds important to me. And also, of course, listed species survey. We've heard from the residents there's a lot of wildlife in this area, and that needs to be studied. And of course, all invasives must be removed. Planning and Development Services, we have winnowed out a number of the conditions that we came into the Planning and Zoning Commission. There are a few that are remaining, but the applicant has made an effort to really pay attention and try to do some of the things that we have suggested. Some suggestions that we have is we always push for loop trails. One-way trails are not fun. Loop trails are great because you're not repeating the same thing that you were doing. They provide more enjoyment in the outdoor experience. And so we recommend loop trails in these specific areas between the townhomes and the single family and in the preserve area. Also, something we think is important is benches, places where people can rest, pet waste stations. I think more and more people walking dogs nowadays, and I think we're trying to kind of get ahead of that and make sure that people address the pet waste issue. So also the pocket parks, that we think there's a great opportunity in this and other developments to make use of this, not just dead space, but space that can be devoted to all sorts of interesting things. It could be a playground, it could be a dog park, it could be a community garden, it could be a disc golf course, a meditation garden, which I think sounds pretty great. Provide for limited parking at the townhome pool. include and this, you've seen this with some of the other developments, Pineapple Grove with some of the other developments would come in with, is we want to limit the impervious surface in that side yard, which is a critical area for trees and planting and green space, so that people are limited to what they can pave, essentially, limited to air conditioning equipment, trash cans, and generators not to exceed 80 square feet. So I think this is a really important one, and we've worked hard with the applicant on this, and the applicant has been receptive. We want to see during that final site plan process preservation, more tree preservation, and this can be done in a number of ways. There's lots of opportunities. Larger lots, and we've got some resistance to that, but we still believe that we would like to see that. And being strategic about your open space and looking at where, once they get to that level of detail, which they're not at now, where can you get more bang for the buck in terms of adjusting open spaces to accommodate more tree preservation? And I think the risk of when you save trees is that you save little tiny areas and they get filled up with water and tree wells and the trees die over time. So we're looking for kind of a strategic and thoughtful manner of preserving those trees. Grading approach. I mean, a lot of developments nowadays, and you can blame FEMA or whoever for this, but fill has to be brought in, especially with the smaller lots. That creates a template that doesn't really allow for living, breathing vegetation. So we're looking for kind of an innovative grading approach that targets and protects trees. And relocation of trees. This has become, with the technology, this has become more something that you never used to see back in the old days, I can tell you. The opportunity to use heavy equipment to relocate those existing trees to where they need to be and where they can be safe and protected in open space parks and buffers. Want some traffic calming. The Tidewater 2 townhomes, all the traffic is going to be coming in on one of the streets. Through Tidewater 1, we're looking to see some tinkering in that to kind of protect in that townhome area. There is a lot of density, a lot of folks who are walking with kids and activity there. Looking for 13 here, a detailed construction phasing and management plan that'll address construction entrances, which can be a problem sometimes. When the work gets done, hours of operation for the construction, land clearing, debris processing, temporary stormwater, and other aspects to minimize the adverse effects to the folks that live around there. We also are recommending a 10-foot side setback in the single-family portion. I think this is the only way you can really try to call for tree preservation in those side yards. 5-foot setback cannot accomplish that. And its 10-foot setback is tough. It can be done, but it's tough. Property acquisitions, this is our standard within 90 days of the final site plan approval. The applicant conveys. I think that we've heard the applicant is interested in extending this to 180 days. We've done this with other developments, don't really have a problem with it. That's that right-of-way along Oleander Avenue, the 25-foot of right-of-way. Public Works has some of their standard comments too. Subdivision improvement agreement, site development permit, and a 6-foot sidewalk along Oleander, which would be terrific. But you can authorize the applicant to pay a fee in lieu of, and I think there's a lot that goes into that. Will this ever really happen? I mean, there's a long way up to that elementary school to the north. That's a ways away. This concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. Corey and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any questions at this point? If not, I'm going to go ahead. The applicant is here. I'm sure they have a presentation for us. Good evening.
For the record, Jeff Alexander, Meritage Homes. Good evening, Commissioners. I want to just start off talking a little bit about who we are, Meritage Homes. We've been building homes since 1985. We started the South Florida Division in 2016, 5th largest home builder in the nation. We operate in 12 states. We've had recent success in the county at some of our active communities, Azalea in particular. Tidewater is our townhome community, as well as out in Bristol. We've been successful selling homes. As far as
That one hit that way.
Huh? How's it, Corey? You guys have something else that might work?
It's on the side.
So what am I gonna do? Okay. All right, perfect. All right, so that just talks a little bit about the history of Meritage Homes and where we are in the state. Another thing, who we are is the homes that we build are efficient. We focus on things like energy efficiency, water efficiency, and indoor air quality. You can see some of these environmental friendly features that are in our homes on the screen. And this last one are just some of the awards that Meritage has received over the years. We build our homes to a higher standard. We're an 11-time Energy Star Partner of the Year. We received multiple awards for customer service excellence through the Avid rating system. And we've also demonstrated a lifetime of commitment to public service by receiving the Builder Magazine Hearthstone Humanitarian Award. Tidewater community that's active right now, I'm sure you guys are aware, it's right next to the Arrigo dealership off US 1. It's an affordable for-sale townhome community. These are 3-bedroom townhomes, 2-story. They all have a garage, driveways on them. It was very well received by the market. We only have a few buildings left to start, and we'll be finished in the community. We've seen single people, we've seen newlyweds, we've seen families, empty nesters. They've all fallen in love with the community. They've all fallen in love with living in St. Lucie County. There aren't many places in South Florida where you can buy the American dream for under $300,000, and that's what we've really tried to do at Tidewater, was make the townhomes affordable, and it's really brought in all kinds of people that just can't afford homes in other parts of the state. In this new Tidewater phase, we're looking to bring more of these affordable townhomes, as well as a single-family component. And through a lot of the discussions with the different groups, we've done quite a bit. We've done multiple neighborhood meetings. We've met with staff multiple times. We've met with certain neighbors one-on-one. We've listened to the P&Z board. We've taken a lot of these comments back, and we've come up with the plan has evolved quite a bit since the original start of it. Now this feedback is incorporated into the plan tonight, and I think we talked about originally we came in with the 91 50-foot lots. Now there's 74 60-foot wide lots. Started with 100 townhomes, and we're now at 94. Now if you look at this, we look at this, although it's one PUD application, we look at this as 2 components to the overall community. We have the townhome section, which is right next to the dealership, which ties into the existing Tidewater. This has a compatible density with that community. And then we look at the single-family section. These homes only access on Oleander. They're all 60-foot lots, and you're at 2.2 units per acre, which is just above the 2 units per acre that are allowed by the current zoning. So over the last year, thank you. So over the last year, we spent an incredible amount of time and effort working on this community. We're excited to bring it to the commission tonight to talk more about it. We have our consultants that are here to answer questions, give a good presentation on some of the key components, drainage, traffic, environmental, things of that nature. And timing right now is very important. We only have a few buildings left to start at Tidewater. Once we complete that community, as a developer, we don't have control of the community. It'd be very difficult to somebody come in there when we're gone. So it's real important tonight that we're asking for your support so we can continue this lovely community, Tidewater, with a proposed plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah, our planner, and the rest of our speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, County Commissioners, Chair Fowler. My name is Leah Heinzelman with Kotler and Hearing, here on behalf of the applicant, Meritage Homes, for Tidewater 2. I want to start out by thanking Thad for his great presentation and overview of the site. We've been working the last 2 years on this final and best design for the project with heavy input from staff, the neighbors, and from all of you. I'd like to highlight our great team. Again, Meritage Homes as the applicant, Kotler and Hearing as the planners and landscape architects, Caulfield and Wheeler as our civil engineers, Pinder Troutman Consulting as our traffic engineers, and Aquatic Research as our environmental planners. Our consultants are here tonight to present and answer any questions you may have. As shown earlier by staff, Tidewater 2 is a continuation of the original Tidewater PUD located east of the St. Lucie River between Oleander Avenue and US 1. Both the original approved PUD and the additional Tidewater 2 portion are located within the urban service boundary for St. Lucie County. A few other notable locations near the site include the Kia and Arrigo dealerships close or adjacent to the site, the approved commercial parcel within Tidewater 1, and other commercial locations to the south and the public storage across US 1. As Jeff mentioned, the Tidewater 1 PUD was approved by the Board of County Commissioners on August 9th, 2022. Since the approval of the PUD, the project has gone through the full site plan process and is currently in the final stages of building. The current residences of Tidewater are extremely happy with their townhomes, and the attainable prices have allowed new home buyers in the area. Taking a look at the future land use for Tidewater 1 site is approved as MXD, while the Tidewater 2 portion exists as residential urban. This allows for 5 dwelling units an acre, which is consistent with the surrounding commercial and MXD uses along US 1. The current zoning and reason we are here before you today for the Tidewater 2 portion is designated at RS2, which allows for 2 dwelling units an acre. We are requesting a proposed zoning change to PUD with a maximum of 5 dwelling units an acre for the new Tidewater 2 portion of the site that is consistent with the underlying land use of RU. A quick overview of the whole site. The existing Phase 1 approved plan is 18.87 acres, with the new Tidewater 2 portion accounting for 42.31 acres and dedicating 0.6 acres of the 25-foot right-of-way along Oleander Avenue. This gives us a total site acreage of 61.7 acres. Again, the existing future land use for Tidewater 2 portion is RU, allowing 5 dwelling units an acre, and with this PUD amendment, rezoning the 42.31 acres of Tidewater 2 gives a maximum of 3.9 dwelling units an acre for the proposed PUD master plan. As I noted earlier, the project is within the urban service boundary and near the core of where the county wants to see higher densities. As you can see in this graphic, Tidewater 1 was approved with 9.77 dwelling units an acre, consistent with the MXD land use and PUD rezoning. While working on the design for the community and receiving input from staff and the residents, it became apparent that the best layout for Tidewater 2 went from the higher density along US 1 and transitioned to a lower compatible density at Oleander Avenue. The portion in purple shows the continuation of the attainable townhome area within Tidewater 2, maxing at 9.7 dwelling units an acre, consistent with the approved Tidewater design and compatible with surrounding commercial uses. The blue highlights the single-family portion of the site, which through many conversations and redesigns has a density of 2.2 dwelling units an acre, almost at what's allowed per the existing zoning. These two densities average to 3.9 dwelling units an acre for the overall Tidewater 2 PUD amendment, again, below the existing land use designation of RU, allowing for 5. And here is the final proposed site plan for the Tidewater 2 PUD amendment. Again, there have been many redesigns and updates to the plan per resident input and staff coordination. And what you see before you is what we believe to be the best design that accounts for the transition of density in the urban service boundary, designing for enhanced stormwater retention, preservation of large quality native trees and neighborhood aesthetics, and the overall enhancement of an existing community within White City. This plan originally started with 100 townhome lots and 91 single-family lots that were 50 foot wide, and has since gone down to 94 townhomes and only 74 single-family lots designed at 60-foot width. We heard the community and agree that the lower density and larger lots makes for a better continuation of Tidewater in the community. To highlight a few items on the plan, the additional townhome portion of Tidewater 2 will connect through the existing Tidewater 1 community. There will be no access between the single-family portion of the site other than pedestrian and EMS. This latest design also provides over 5.5 acres of preserved and enhanced tree areas and buffers to not only screen the community from Oleander, but continue the native vegetated drive for the White City neighborhood. Within the large areas of preserved landscape are public walking trails, rest stops, and areas for pollinator habitats and additional landscape. During our multiple neighborhood meetings, it was brought up about the safety for children getting picked up and dropped off for school. The design allows for the school bus to turn around in the community and pick up drop-off in Tidewater rather than on Oleander, giving safety for children and their families. You can also see from the plan the pockets of existing or relocated vegetation between the lots to avoid long stretches of houses and give break for pedestrian access to the multitude of trails within the site. A quick look over the unit mix. As mentioned, we have 94 townhomes, the mix that are 20-foot lots and 24-foot lots. And our 74 single-family lot units are 60 feet by 120, and all are designed to meet county standards for the 22-foot front setback driveway lengths. Here's an enhanced look at the buffers within Tidewater 2. Along the northeastern portion of the site, we relocated our large central lake to give more of a buffer along the existing residential lots, as well as going above and beyond with the required 25-foot buffers, as well as 40-foot to the back of lots with a 6-foot fence and a 2-foot berm. An additional 10 feet was given to the 50-foot berm and landscape buffer along the property line at Melville Road. Along Oleander Avenue, we've designed to not only dedicate 25 feet of right-of-way to the county, but also an additional 100 feet of preserved vegetation area between the back of the lots to the existing residents. We understand the importance of the native landscape and have designed to ensure the quality of animal habitat and tree vegetation will stay the same or become enhanced around their properties. And for this reason, we've also removed 2 of the extra lots around the existing residents to preserve their quality of life. Now, there's no secret that this is a heavily vegetated site and many large oaks and sable palms. All palm trees are being relocated on site, and many of the large oaks are being preserved within the design of the buffers and preservation areas around the lakes. It is hard to spot save certain trees, especially between lots. However, at the time of final site plan, we will have an arborist review all tagged trees to ensure their health and make decisions on ones to be relocated if necessary. Meritage is also open to other ideas from staff on the best ways to preserve and some additional tree preservation measures we plan to take for our mitigation requirements include preserving trees within lots that will not be affected by grading or relocate trees to the rear of lots that are adjacent to open spaces. Where this is not possible, we are looking into additional native vegetation to be added to the rear of the homes to count toward the mitigation requirements. This is all dependent on our extensive in-field analysis during the final site plan. Within this design community, we are providing significant benefits that go above what can be done with a by-right plan. The 42.31 acres of Tidewater 2 could be platted by right with 84 lots, all having access only to Oleander. With our proposed community, all townhomes are exiting to US 1, and only the 74 platted PUD lots will have access to Oleander Avenue. We are also able to preserve trees and habitat as a whole community and design for quality in the neighborhood with, by right, the tree preservation would potentially be by lot. As you saw earlier, we were able to provide extensive buffers along Oleander and the other sides of the property, and in a by right scenario, those buffers are not required. There is also a potential for lots to front onto Oleander, causing more driveway congestion versus our one access into the community that will meet county standards. As you'll hear in a moment, our full stormwater design will amend existing and future neighborhood issues and improve the quality for the community. And with a by right, the stormwater for the right-of-way would need to be constructed, but all lots could be designed without continuity. You saw our location for the safe school bus drop-off and pickup, and we are proposing only one-story units near existing neighbors, while with by right, the houses only need to meet county standards and what the homeowner chooses. And lastly, we are providing continued utilities from Tidewater 1, where in a by right scenario, it could be lot septic and lot-specific drainage. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Becky Mulcahy, our professional traffic engineer, to discuss the traffic flow map.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Mulcahy with Pinder Troutman Consulting. As Leah just discussed, straight zoning by right would allow more units accessing Oleander Avenue than the proposed PUD. Our team has worked diligently to minimize impacts to Oleander. We bifurcated the site so that only the single-family units would have access to Oleander. We have provided a school bus stop within the PUD so that buses will not need to stop traffic on Oleander. And the number of units has now dropped to 74, which is 11% less traffic than what straight zoning by right of 84 units would generate. With all that being said, we completed a traffic impact study per St. Lucie County and the Transportation Planning Organization standards. It has been updated several times to include revised numbers of units and also to include the newest traffic counts. The study shows that with this development, the impacted roadways and intersections are projected to meet the adopted level of service standards. Any and all agency comments have been addressed and resolved. The county's engineering consultant has reviewed, approved, and certified our study. It should be noted that with this PUD, 25 feet of right-of-way will be dedicated to St. Lucie County for Oleander Avenue, and the road impact fees collected by St. Lucie County will be about 40% higher than the straight zoning by right.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tim Foster from Caulfield & Wheeler, the engineer record for the civil portion of the project. I wanted to give you a brief description of the current drainage in the property and what we're proposing, along with a couple other improvements that we think can help improve the entire area's drainage functionality. The site is currently a densely forested former grove, which has an unrestricted discharge to an existing drainage system via 24-inch pipe and head wall that runs west under Oleander and Citrus and eventually discharges into the St. Lucie River. The existing pipe that we would tie into has an invert a foot and 1.7 feet lower than our proposed control elevation. This drainage system, actually then I'll go into the proposed. The proposed stormwater management system consists of catch basins, drainage pipes, which convey water and runoff to lakes and bioswales for treatment and attenuation prior to the proposed control structure, which significantly limits the discharge into that same 24-inch system. And I'll kind of quantify that with one typical storm, which will pick the 10-year 3-day, which would be a typical storm that we'd experience. Probably it happens every 2 to 3 years now, it seems to be. That's an 8.5-inch rainfall storm. By requirements, our control structure is only allowed to discharge 2 inches of that. So right now, what would happen on site naturally is the ground would store about 3 inches of that. So you'd wind up with, if you do the math on that, about a 60% decrease in runoff volume for that system versus proposed versus what we're at initially. Beyond that, we did a little field evaluation of the site and found a couple things of interest. One was a free-flowing artesian well that was elevating the water table for both local and downstream conditions, causing an issue. We had that capped. One other thing that we looked at was the existing drainage system that runs to the west. There's pipes and culverts that run under both Oleander and Citrus Avenue, which are older and in need of maintenance. That's one of the things we propose to improve if this project is approved. Beyond that, we went farther to a ditch that's west of Citrus. Let me see if I can bring that up. What you're looking at right now is a ditch that's west of Citrus Avenue looking to the west. Runs along the border of the Lone Pine HOA Association. We think that's also causing a significant problem in limiting drainage because of the undergrowth and lack of maintenance in both these systems. Like I said, the roadway system that runs under both Oleander and Citrus needs cleaning up, and so does this ditch. That was one of the things that we met with HOA, the Lone Pine HOA, and County Public Works multiple times, and even walked this area with the residents of Lone Pine to come up with potential ideas to improve the drainage functionality of the overall system. And in essence, we're trying to be a good neighbor. That's basically it.
All right, thank you, Tim. So as I stated earlier, we have had many neighborhood meetings dating back from August 2024, with another at the beginning of 2025 to listen to neighbors and bring the feedback to our design. We had a meeting with the existing Tidewater 1 residents in April, the Lone Pine HOA in May to discuss drainage, and recently with some of the White City members in September. Through the last few years, the team and I have gotten to know the residents more on a personal level. and we greatly appreciate their continued collaboration and discussions as we move forward with this project. Meritage aims to be a community partner, and to the best of our abilities, we've provided updates to the design that focus on the neighborhood concerns with architecture, safety, drainage, buffering, and overall preservation of Tidewater 2. One of the items noted from the White City residents was to ensure the architecture of the community matched the historic neighborhood design. While we don't have a full-fledged product to share, the following items listed will be incorporated to keep the cohesive design with the community. This includes facade accents, roof and porch details, paver driveways, neutral colors, and keeping all native Florida landscape around the homes. Some of the other feedback as shown earlier included the increased separation of the buffers in native areas around the existing homes to keep the native canopy and feel in the neighborhood. As mentioned before, the lots along the existing residences on all sides will be restricted to 1 story, and overall, there has been a decrease in the single-family and townhome design of Tidewater 2 since the original submittal, giving a final count of 94 townhome lots and 74 single-family lots. Additionally, there will be drainage improvements between the communities, and vehicular traffic will be bisected between the single-family and townhome lots other than EMS. There is pedestrian access from Oleander all the way to US 1 for the residents and White City community. In closing, this amendment to the Tidewater PUD for the additional Tidewater 2 will provide townhomes consistent with the approved and built Tidewater 1 PUD, giving more attainable housing along US 1. It will also provide single-family residences with a smooth density transition from the townhome development and the surrounding neighborhood. The public will have pedestrian access through the site from Oleander to US 1, as well as other trails and pathways. And will be providing quality improvements to the existing and future drainage in the area and alleviate deficiencies, as well as protecting the native habitat throughout the entire site with large buffers between existing residences. We agree with staff's recommendations for approval with the following modifications. The lot sizes for the single family remain as shown at 60-foot width due to commission feedback. Further tree preservation analysis will be performed during the site plan approval, including in-field health analysis by a certified arborist and updated tree mitigation plan. Due to comments made throughout the rezoning process, we request the standard 5-foot side setback to allow for 3-car garage product to be built. Larger home product was requested by the commission and community members to transition the development to the neighborhood. And then as staff mentioned earlier, we'd like to identify the timeline for the right-of-way dedication to start after 180 days of the final site plan approval instead of the listed 90. So we are requesting approval for the amendment to the Tidewater PUD for the inclusion of the new townhome and single-family residences. And I'd like to invite Bob Rains to make closing remarks.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Bob Rains. I'm a land use attorney with the Gunster Law Firm here on behalf of the applicant this evening. You know, I've been practicing land use law in the Treasure Coast area, specifically in St. Lucie County and Martin County, for over 28 years, which means I have a lot of arrows in my back, and I'm sure I may even take a few more tonight. But I'm proud to say that I've been involved with a lot of projects in St. Lucie County that have provided wonderful homes and jobs for citizens of St. Lucie County, and I believe that's the case again tonight. It's been my experience, though, recently that we have become fixated on the number of units and the density of the project and the size of the lots, and we're not focusing enough on the quality of the project. And I think that's an important point. And I'm afraid that's happening a little bit here this evening with some of the comments I've heard in the past. Listen, I understand that the residents, I appreciate what they have to say, and I have the utmost respect for their comments and their concerns. And I understand that they would probably love to see that piece of property stay as it is today and not even be developed. You know, that's just not probably feasible given the development pressures and stuff that we're experiencing in Florida. And from what I'm reading, the materials and stuff in my industry, it's only going to continue to happen in Florida with what's happening in the rest of the country. We are the place to be in Treasure Coast. I'm a Treasure Coast resident. It is the place to live in Florida. I know also that some of the residents I've heard and some folks say, well, just do straight zoning and half-acre lots. You know, that would be okay, or at least more acceptable. Well, let me just tell you, I've seen that a lot over the last few years. And if you do a straight zoning, you may win that battle, but I think you'll lose the war. And I say that because the concerns that the residents have set forth and the concerns that we've heard from you all can't be addressed or won't be addressed through straight zoning. So for instance, under a PUD, under straight zoning, you're not going to get the Oleander Avenue corridor protected like the residents want, and I think makes sense. Under straight zoning, that won't happen. Under this PUD, that is occurring. The tree preservation, that won't happen to the extent under straight zoning that it will through a PUD and through this PUD that we're proposing. It won't, straight zoning won't address the drainage issues and the flooding concerns that Tim talked about that we're going to try to address and try to be a part of the solution on through a PUD. That won't happen through straight zoning. As Becky mentioned, traffic actually will increase on Oleander Avenue through straight zoning. It won't be as intense through this PUD. And the buffer areas that we're proposing aren't required under straight zoning, but we're doing them under the PUD. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. The PUD, I believe, addresses a lot of the concerns that straight zoning won't do, and I believe this project, it's about the quality of the project, and we have listened to you. You saw the numbers that we've reduced the units, and with that, we would respectfully request you approve the PUD and the site plan before you this evening. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have, and obviously would like to reserve time to address any resident comments. So thank you.
Absolutely. Before the board, we start with any questions, comments, or discussion. This is quasi-judicial. So Commissioner Clasby, if I can start with you.
Yeah, I've met with staff, the applicant, and members from the public.
Staff, applicant, and residents.
I'm applicant, Meritage, Bob Rains, Gunster Law Firm, Kotler and Hearing, Ben and Corey, and residents.
Staff, applicant, and residents.
I have met with Leah from Coulter and some staff from Coulter, Bob Rains, the applicant, staff, and residents, and a few of the businesses.
Okay. All right. And if it's okay with the board, what I'll do is I'd like to open it up to public comment first. So with that, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item, you have the floor. Come up, give us your first and last name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Looking good. Good evening.
I know, I'm so happy. My name is Kim Collins, and I live at 996 Echo Street, Fort Pierce. My mom is Jeannie McCorkle, who is one of the residents that have been working with Meritage and Leah and such. And they have done a lot of improvements and made a lot of concessions. I just want to go over a couple things. One, we're not opposed to development, and so I don't want anybody to think we are, because we're not. And we appreciate all that they've done and listened to us and made changes. We just want to be more compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. We are not Port St. Lucie. We are not Fort Pierce. We're White City, okay? And it is a community that's been there for a very long time. And that community and the way we live sort of needs to be that historic, compatible type of thing. I love the preserving of more trees. I liked the proposal that I had seen, and I think that Thad did it, which did reduce it in the cul-de-sac area, it looks like, of the 8. I really like that, and I think the easements between the houses with the tree easements would be beneficial. Was really lost when I heard someone say a 3-car garage. I'm not sure anybody in White City has a 3-car garage. And I think if you might consider reducing the 3-car garages, that reduces the number of cars on the streets. Kitterman, Sager, Ulrich definitely are not sufficient roads. So the less amount of cars we have on them would be better. The Eden Oaks, the 160 units, I mean, those also will be people that are going to be traveling down our streets. Is it their fault? No, it's not. Is Kitterman their problem? No, it's not, but it is our problem. White City is a community. We care about all of White City and all of our roads and all of the developments that come in, how they affect it. The bus stop, I love the fact you can go through there. I love that they were amenable to some design ideas we gave them, the critter holes in the fences. And like I said, I think we have worked together well. I still have issues with the density. I would love to see it go down just a little bit more. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Steve Holden, 6404 Oleander Avenue. I own the 5-acre property just to the southwest corner of the Tidewater 1 development project. We have heard, and I'm sure we will hear, many more discussions related to traffic, infrastructure, stormwater management related to this proposed development project. I wholeheartedly agree with the comments that have been made from the citizens, as well as some of the comments that staff had brought up regarding the limitations of Oleander, Kitterman, and Sager. However, I'm going to take my time to provide some comments that have a slightly different viewpoint on this development project specific to the White City area. White City it's a very unique and special part of St. Lucie County. It is a small piece of old Florida right off of US 1 in the heart of the county. I've heard both staff and the applicant tonight, talk about kind of what the textbooks tell us. The textbooks tell us that as we move west from the intensive use areas along US 1, we're supposed to have high density housing. Then we're supposed to have lower density housing, ultimately moving to open spaces and agriculture as you go further west. As I said, this was communicated by both staff and the applicant. While the textbooks tell us this, they fail to take into account the important role that the unique and historical places like White City bring to the area. Whether a generational resident who was born and raised in White City decided to stay and raise their own children here, a homeowner who lives in a cracker home preserving the history of that architectural style in the area, or people with acreage using it to maintain the agricultural roots of the area with cattle, horses, and other livestock. High-density housing just threatens that atmosphere that the residents enjoy in White City. And I think it will adversely affect the quality of life of the residents who are accustomed to what we currently have in this very special place we call White City. With that said, I certainly respect landowner rights to use their properties in a manner that best suits their individual goals. That includes developers. However, when a developer purchases a property with an RS2 zoning designation, it is not incumbent upon this board to rubber stamp zoning changes requested by the developer when those changes adversely affect the current residents and their quality of life. This just isn't it. I'll wrap up very quickly. It's not compatible with the current area, and it will adversely affect the current residents, especially when it's such a drastic change of RS2 to PUD. I keep hearing that, well, a PUD might actually be better. When the PUD allows for 5 units per acre, and it's currently zoned at RS2, you can't convince me otherwise. There are still some significant issues, such as the traffic on Oleander, Sager, Ulrich, with having basically no mitigation plans for those roadways and how we're going to improve or address those.
Mr. Holden, I do need you to wrap it up.
Yes. So anyhow, that's why I'm here. I encourage the honorable members of the board of commissioners to deny this proposed zoning change. And thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and also sending your email. I received it. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Janice Douglas, 6385 Gardena Street. I agree with everything being said, and I'm not as nice as Kim. I'm sorry. I really don't want to see the development, and I totally agree that it doesn't mean we have to rubber stamp what they are asking for. But I'm noticing, having been here 30 plus years and people longer than I, that we have at 4003 Oleander, 50 units of Oleander Oaks. At 4101, we have a 4-story multifamily 30-unit apartment building coming in on Oleander. So if you go stand down the road, we're just building our way right down the road. Then we have the Tidewater 2. 160. Eden Oaks, which is just the other side, 200 units. Where are all these people going? They can't get into the schools, the doctors, the grocery stores. The roadways are narrow. We've talked about it. The roads are crumbling in White City. I'm sure that's probably due to water. And more traffic is not, you're going to have to redo the infrastructure before we bring all these people in. And that's the thinking that I just don't really get, is we just keep open the doors to more and more and more building. That's 200 units. Take 4 people in 200 units. You know, we got 450 times 4. That's the minimum in some of these units. So do the math, and please think about what we're doing to the most beautiful, quiet community that once you build, we can't go back. We can't stop what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Pam Roberts, 6405 Oleander Avenue. I just want to reiterate what all of them have said. I don't oppose development. They can use their land the way that the master plan had proposed the land, but we do disagree with them wanting to revise it because it just puts additional stress on our already stressed infrastructure, which is inadequate.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Good evening.
I'm Patricia Parker at 6100 Oleander Avenue. I'm one of the 2 houses that they formed the horseshoe right around. Myself and Jeannie are neighbors. Again, I reiterate what Kim said, that we really appreciate that they have taken extreme time to work with us, listen to us, and try to accommodate. Again, still concerned about the density, and even though the traffic studies show that they will operate at standard operation levels, where does the county come in to help with that? Because it's already obvious that Oleander can't handle much more traffic as it is. Certain areas already, they've paved over a little bit, and if you drive down, say, in front of the Montessori school, you're going to go off into the grass because the road is already deteriorated there, and that's just regular traffic. My other big concern is the wildlife. Is that going to just be cut down trees, start bulldozing, and coyotes, raccoons, possums run wherever? Or are we capturing and relocating these animals? I also heard from another resident off of Melville Road that when they started building over in that area, she had a major rat infestation in her property and her vehicles, and it was thousands of dollars to remediate that. So that's something I'm concerned about as being one of those homeowners that's going to be extremely impacted by what goes on there. I do understand that there is sewer line already run on Tidewater 1, And so that's going to extend into Tidewater too, and that's another concession that they did do for us, offer to extend, to us possible sewer lines. So that's helpful. And again, just the density and traffic, which everyone else has said the same things. So I don't know where the county steps in, even though it says it's acceptable, we have to know and look at it that it's not.
Thank you. Anyone else willing? Hi, good evening.
Maysoon Sala. I live at 8613 Dahlia Circle.
Could you say your or spell your name for the secretary?
You want, which button do you want?
No, just push the mic up a little bit.
Okay. Maysoon Sala, Mayson. I live at 8613 Dahlia Circle, Port St. Lucie. I'm a real estate agent as well as a designer in Charter Coast area, and I have brought many families, young professionals to White City area and Tidewater. They love the product. I also bought a Meritage home because I do really appreciate how competitive their price was for what they offered in terms of the build. I love the idea that this community creates enclosure. As of now, I entered off of US 1, which is not really revitalized compared to, Palm Beach County, or I was involved also in community redevelopment in Lake Worth, so I know what it takes, and it takes small businesses to add character, and they need population. And so in terms of density, the fact that they're adding single-family homes, I think that really elevates the value of the townhomes in the area, especially since I picked up that they're going to add 3-car garages. The environmental preservation, if I'm correct, that feels like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with an Abacoa, and being able to leave your home and walk in nature, that's an excellent quality of life, especially in this area. And I think before I was in the real estate business, I was a small business owner in California. I had locations in different areas, and brick and mortar, they need traffic. So I know density is a fear, but the amount of energy, the young families, young professionals coming in, I think that's going to be an excellent addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing? Good evening.
Good evening. John McConnell, 6410 Oleander. Real quick, we've got these other developments there that are, they're going to put theirs in and walk away, but what about these other? That's what I'm concerned about, is how many are we going to pack in a square mile? We got a unique area. Let's build with what's there, not what they want to put in as new. So the traffic on Oleander,
I know.
And it's just going to get worse. Port St. Lucie, it's a problem, and it's a concern, and I think we got to think hard on it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, you look like J.D. Vance.
Next
president.
Thank you. I like your shirt, by the way.
Anyone else wishing to address the board on this item? Good evening.
How you doing? Good evening. I'm Alex Rodriguez Torres. I'm at 121 Southeast Via Sangro, Port St. Lucie. A couple of things. Growth is something that if we do it responsible, it brings value to our community. It brings tax revenue to our community. It brings amenities into our community. It allows people to want to come to the area to visit if you have kids, if you have grandkids, whatever it may be. If you look just at the map the way it is, it's not as if there's a high-rise being built in the middle of the country. There's green space in an area that's already saturated with growth. It's a pretty fair request to have a developer come in and ask for land to be developed the right way, meaning they have a plan in place. I think this group went in and bring back a lot of what they didn't need to do in terms of setbacks, putting the green space in place, reducing the amount of units in terms of density. If you do the math just on that alone, that's about $10.5 million of just, sorry, we're not going to build these units because we want to try to make the community as happy as possible. The other thing is that if we do the math on the amount of revenue that'll come in, you're at approximately $1.5 million a year that this will bring just in tax revenue to the county. That money, I believe, can be used within the county to fix some of the roads that are already a problem out there. The developer's also saying that he'll bring in the ability to fix some of the existing roads that already have a problem in terms of the drainage. The residents that came out last time took pictures and they showed all the proof of the problem in terms of those roads and the flooding that already exists out there. If we don't develop anything, who pays for that? The residents do, the taxpayers. And so without growth, there is no one else to come into the town to put additional tax revenue to take care of what it is that we need every day, which is infrastructure, streets, amenities, the ability to have a good quality of life for the residents. So I put a couple of keynotes just in regards to some benefits. Benefits would be creating construction jobs in the area, retail jobs, service jobs. More taxpayers equals lower tax pressure on the existing residents, right? Because if we're able to bring in more revenue from developers that are putting money in here, new residents moving in, that adds more revenue to the county, and it allows you to put more infrastructure to fix the roads. I think that if you improve the roads, drainage, public safety, add sidewalks, maybe lighting in that area, street lighting, there's ways to reduce the flood. There's ways to create a good impact for that whole area based on what the developer has tried to do to make it an appeasing project for everybody, based on what he's doing. The other thing was mentioned in PUD versus a straight zoning. So, if a PUD is created, at least there's uniformity and there's a controlled way to design a project, so it's done the right way. If it's not done that way, it's hodgepodge and it's individual, 100 builders times, the amount of units in there. So I highly suggest you guys approve the project. It's a pleasure to come out and see you tonight, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board on this item? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment, come back to the board. I have a quick question. Leah, was a soil report done for this property? Okay, I didn't see it included anywhere. What was the result of that report? What kind of soil? What's its drainage like?
Talk about the geotech, the types of soils. Yeah, we always do borings and we do soil samplings. Obviously, all the the soil that has all the organics will be stripped and used, like in the buffers area. Structural fill will be used on the lots. That usually typically has the ability to percolate a lot better. But all that will be designed with the engineer, the percolation rates, the drainage. All that is taken into account when they do their drainage design.
Okay. So do we know how high the water level is sitting below the ground?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but yeah, the water table was what's that?
About 8.5. I don't know what the average grade is for that. Based on the Tidewater 1 project, the water control elevation, or where the water sits, is about 8.5 feet NAVD. I don't know the average grade on this property to tell you how far below the existing elevation it is, though.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any? I have some comments, but I'll hold my comments for a moment if there's additional questions. If not, I'd ask the board. I would like to go into my comments if there's no questions at this time.
I'm sure I have one.
Commissioner Townsend.
Are they contributing anything to the road on Oleander?
25 feet strip.
Okay, thank you.
My comments are specifically for the staff report, but I can wait till after I hear everybody else's, so I don't cover it twice.
Okay. So if I could, I just want to reference a couple things in the staff report. talks about, staff points out that the rural character of Oleander Avenue is reinforced by its narrow road, absence of shoulders, lack of sidewalks, as far as south of Midway Road. Oleander, White City, you know, you've heard from the residents, and I've gotten to know my residents very, very well. And you've heard them. They've not gotten up and gotten nasty. They understand development is coming. They don't expect it to sit blank forever. But what we are looking for is a little more continuity with the area. So I'm just going to go again through a couple things. Vicinity roads like Oleander Avenue, Ulrich, and Sager are substandard in terms of road width, and the latter two streets are not paved to county specifications and would experience increased traffic as they are the closest east-west links between Oleander Avenue and US 1. That's on page 8. Page 9, the traffic impacts to Oleander Avenue, a substandard road in terms of paved width, absence of shoulders, and lack of sidewalks. Guide staff to support the bifurcated approach, meaning separating the townhomes, ingress and egress from the single family. When we get into the standards of review on page 13, it talks about the departures that they're requesting that deviate from our land development code, where they're asking for more compact lots than dimensional requirements of the county's most dense residential zoning districts. For me, for departures away from the minimum, the intent of the PUD is to provide flexibility in such regulations in exchange for design creativity and innovation. I'm not seeing that enough to substantiate the deviations from the land development code as it stands now. Page 14, as previously stated, staff has maintained concerns about the large amount of tree removal proposed, almost half of projected tree DBH. Corey, how much, or Thad, I apologize, what is their tree, how much do they have to pay in for trees roughly at this point still, even with their avoidance and minimization? What's the estimate? And I know it's an estimate, but.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have Brian Ingram of the Environmental Resources Department. Their team submitted the final report, and on page 20, under subsection F, they highlighted the presence of trees, various cabbage palms, and the proposal is currently intending to impact roughly 505 cabbage palms. We heard this evening intend to relocate some on site. Overall, total of 16,009 inches DBH of required tree mitigation through relocation, on-site preservation, and other means. They're reducing and offsetting that mitigation, but they've highlighted the remaining 5,359 inches diameter breast height of required mitigation will be met via a fee in lieu, additional preservation, and/or additional plantings of native canopy trees consistent with the tree mitigation methods identified in our land development code.
Gotcha. So can we put an estimated dollar amount on that?
The tree mitigation for the remaining 5,359 inches would be at $200 per inch diameter at breast height. It's just over $1 million.
Okay. All right. When we get to page 21, this PUD seeks to design flexibility to allow for smaller single-family detached lots at 60 foot wide that are allowed, which are more narrow than what is allowed by the county's most dense single-family zoning district, which is RS4, which has a minimum lot width of 75 feet. Here's the clincher for me. Flexibility is also needed for the townhome component, which is not allowed under any conventional zoning district, which then for me means that there would be an effect on property values, and it is not a orderly and logical development pattern to have the townhome component mixed in with single-family residences. On page 22, traffic, the proposed development significantly impacts road facilities in the area. and the fact that drainage does rely on coordination with a half privately owned canal or ditch is also troublesome. So when I look at this, I know you guys have, from where it started, it has improved vastly. But when you were in last, I mentioned I was looking for something along the lines of half-acre lots along the front, even continuity with no extra houses, sort of an even, if you will, a northwest. In my mind, I saw half-acre lots, and I was more than happy to allow a little extra density along that backed up to the townhomes, thinking that you could have a young family move in, move along those back smaller lots, and in 5 years look to move up towards the front of that development into these nice, beautiful half-acre lots. I asked for a community garden, a pollinating garden, things that give a nod to White City. So for me, what I'm seeing is it's not necessarily about the density, because you are pretty much right there with what the zoning allows, but it's not meeting the rural character. There's literally a farm right across the road from this. The roadway conditions, the departures away from the LDC, the amount of avoidance and minimization that's required for the trees, the fact that the townhome component is not allowed under any conventional zoning currently, traffic, all those things, I am having trouble getting behind this project. So that is where I am at this point. And I have to share that it was a little bit different before I really dug into the staff report. And once I really went through this thoroughly, it definitely it lost my support.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Clasby.
So I couldn't agree more with the Planning and Zoning Commission's assessment of this project. However, we, the County Commission, have to find substantial and competent evidence showing whether it does or does not comply with the comprehensive plan. And I was reading some case law, actually, Board of County Commissioners versus Snyder, 1993. It said that a rezoning decision must be supported by competent and substantial evidence showing the proposal complies with the comprehensive plan and code at the time of the decision. So that, to me, would say that we should not push it forward to fix all these things at the site plan, because if we don't like it, we could get hit with a Burt Harris claim, because they'll have entitlements at that time. So I have a couple pieces of evidence I'd like to enter into the record with the assistance of staff. I'm going to ask you to pull up a couple things from the staff report, so if you could pull that up, and I'll ask you to read it, but don't add anything else but what I ask you to read. Go ahead and pull up page 20 from the staff report.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, would you like me to pull it up on screen?
Yes, please.
Thank you for your patience.
So while he's pulling that up, page 20, item H, deals with, as Commissioner Fowler alluded to, with another page regarding the proposed amendments results in an orderly and logical development pattern. So if staff could go ahead and read the last sentence where it starts with "while single family."
Good evening again. While single-family detached lots have been reduced from 90 to 74, staff recommends further reduction of lots or other modifications to provide a final site plan design that includes some larger lots to allow for tree preservation areas on individual lots, provide a more organic and less uniform development pattern, and improve transition toward the rural character of Oleander Avenue.
So my question for staff is, have any further reductions been made since the comment was made, or is what's being presented at this time the same thing that triggered the comment?
Commissioner, and invite Thad to weigh in as the primary author. I think at one point they were at 76 lots and they transitioned to 74. Those 2 lots were removed at the rear of the existing homes along Oleander, but not significant changes or implementation of larger lot sizes in that particular area.
So the comment still stands that they should further reduce. Okay. If you could pull up page 12 from the staff report regarding tree removal, avoidance, and minimization. I believe in your report you mentioned it does not comply. And so the bottom left there. If you could read the second and third sentence.
I believe we're at, while the applicant has admirably provided for a conservation area, it is appropriate to question if removal of almost half the native trees, native tree DBH represents such an effort. Staff recommends that during the final site plan process, the applicant actively reduces the number of trees to be removed.
Does the plan shown to us tonight meet the avoidance and minimization standard?
I think that the preliminary plan here can meet the code, the land development code. I think that in a way, avoidance and minimization is subject. It's a little bit subjective, but using what's in the comp plan, I think that they can have a tree mitigation plan that meets code. Currently, they're planning on meeting it with a.
Does the plan presented to us tonight meet the code?
It does, as long as you're okay with, the remaining 5,359 inches coming from fee in lieu of mitigation to be used for the purchase of.
And are we required to accept that as the option?
It is in the code, yes.
Okay, but it's up to our discretion?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. On page 20, item F, where it talks about significant impacts on the natural environment, approximately half of the protected DBH would be removed. Staff again recommends the number of trees to be removed should be reduced. The plan before us tonight does not have these reductions, does it?
Commissioner, not since the authoring of this report.
Okay, thank you. On page 4, if you could go there, on substandard roadway and sidewalks. If you could read the second sentence on page 4.
The rural character of Oleander Avenue is reinforced by the narrow road, absent shoulders, and lack of sidewalks south of Midway Road.
Has the applicant proposed any improvements or mitigations to address this?
The applicant has identified intent to pay road impact fees on a per lot basis, but not direct improvements to the adjacent roadways.
Okay, pull up page 20, item I, conflict with public interest. Just read the entirety of that one sentence there.
Commissioner states, staff believes that with staff recommendations, including an increase in on-site tree preservation, consideration of impacts of substandard roadways, and adequate stormwater design, the proposed amendment is not anticipated to harm the public interest and is in keeping with the Land Development Code intent.
Was this fixed in the plan that's presented before us this evening?
No particular modifications have been proposed since the authoring.
So, based on the findings that we've read into the record just now, including staff statements that in addition to lot reductions, tree preservations, and infrastructure improvements that are still needed to meet the standards of our Land Development Code, I would move to deny Tidewater 2 PUD as it doesn't meet the regulations outlined in the code and comp plan.
Commissioner Clasby, Mr. Raines.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you very much.
Can we see if we have a second on that before we get any other comments?
Mr. Raines did reserve the right to rebut. So if we could just give him that. And then not for nothing, but there may be additional conversation that might want to be had, even though I do understand you made the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I want to respond to Commissioner Claspy's comments that we don't comply. And I'd like to do that by asking some questions, if I could, of the staff at this time. Commissioner Fowler, Chair Fowler.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Benton and Mr. Crow, I will ask both of you, in your professional opinion, does the project, does the project before you this evening meet the code requirements and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, the report as submitted identifies potential modifications to better align with the standards of review, including the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan. So the report is seeking modifications and updates to the preliminary plan as presented.
I'm sorry, Corey, I didn't hear the end of that. I apologize.
The recommendation indicates that with modifications, there's the ability to align with those standards.
But those are recommendations, correct?
They are recommendations.
And so, but it's, even without those recommendations, would this project not be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development codes?
I think the question to be answered is more developed, in that the site, as we know, the residential urban future land use category provides a maximum density of up to 5 dwelling units per acre. And the standards of review consider the comprehensive and cumulative design, the approach to environmental impacts to public facilities. And so staff and our global recommendation is seeking reduced impacts to both those public facilities and environmental assets of the site.
Well, I want to be clear, because I think it's important to make the distinction, because there's a comment that we're not consistent, and that's why this project is, there's a motion to deny this project because we're not consistent with the comprehensive plan and the LDRs, the Land Development Code. And everything that you were pointed to read was a recommendation. So had this project been approved tonight as is, would it not be consistent with the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan?
I believe staff's position with the modifications as suggested in our conditions of approval that require updates and modifications to the design, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that this plan is consistent. I believe that it would not have gotten this far without the fact that it would be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. You have an excellent staff. I don't believe they would have brought it forward tonight without. I understand the recommendations that are being made and some of the modifications that are being requested, but that's not the same thing as being not consistent and in violation of the code and the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lee.
I have 4 issues with the project. They all been spoken about, and I don't need to expand on them too much, but compatibility in the neighborhood is the biggest one, in my opinion, for me. We have a setting that doesn't have a PUD in it, and as much as it's being protected as far as view from the street, that leads me into the second one, which is the roads, the ditches on each side, the lack of sidewalks. This community, in my opinion, is going to attract a younger buyer. I believe that younger buyer is going to be driving more, which leads me into my third thing that I don't like, which has been mentioned, is the lot size. I do believe that if you increase the lot size and got some larger, some larger lots out there, your potential buyer isn't going to be the working class, which is going to cut down on the traffic on Oleander, and quite frankly, I think in that area, if you did a study, you're going to find mostly retired people out there taking care of their land. And then the other thing that I have a problem with is all the wildlife that is there and the trees. Mitigating all of those trees, filling it in, land absorption. I just can't go along with it. One last thing that that I would like to add into it, the compatibility. I think you really need to look at the area, and it's like you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and it just doesn't fit. I think you could find something in there and make something that's very nice, but I do think that you're going to have to really reduce the lot sizes, or excuse me, increase the lot sizes to make that more of a compatibility. And quite frankly, that's the standard zoning right now. I'd love to see a couple of streets go in there, and as other people had mentioned, you know, acre-sized lots, and bring in some older clientele. Anyway, I won't make a second on that until we hear from the rest of the board, but I am for denying the project.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lowry.
So I will not repeat a lot of what has already been said, but I will echo a couple things. I do think, Meritage, you guys have done an incredible job working with the residents, having your neighborhood meetings, listening to them. I appreciate all the changes you've made, and maybe in another location it would make more sense for me. But my main issue is the infrastructure and the roads. I'm in this area every other day, and Sager, Ulrich, and Oleander just cannot handle this sort of project at this time. You know, White City is so unique, and we need to really think about how we're developing that area. I think we have some more room to make some changes, but, you know, unfortunately, the infrastructure is just not there yet, and the compatibility is also an issue, and the amount of trees that are on there. So kind of echo what everyone else says. I do appreciate all of your hard work, but I just think we're not there yet.
Commissioner Thompson.
So I concur with a lot of what has been said, but I do want to point out a couple of things. Mr. Raines, I would agree. I don't think you're in violation, because I would agree it wouldn't have gotten this far. I too want to thank you, the residents, because I know that y'all worked hard on this. You have met them multiple times. I know you've had multiple meetings with Commissioner Fowler, and you have been more than gracious and polite, and I've never heard of anything to where you got ugly or disrespectful, and that speaks volumes. Really it does, because so many times people, they're passionate, and they let the passion overrule them, and it gets the best of them. And I don't know that y'all have ever let that happen. You've always been respectful, and the meetings have always gone well, at least from what I've been told. But I do want to say, Kim, I would like a 3-car garage, just saying. You know, when your husband has antique cars and your kids have 4x4s, you kind of need a bigger garage. But I do think that there's been a lot of concessions made from the meetings. And I do agree with Mr. Torres that development, there is benefits to that. I agree on both sides. I think that the neighbors, I own property in White City, and this could affect me, right? Because I'm right there by Midway Road and Weatherby. So it could, potentially come that way. But I think that y'all have done a great job. I think that there's still more room, and I do think the residents are willing to go back and have more conversations with you. So I could sit here and point out all the things that you have done and that are by right versus what could happen if you come back. You could come back with even more than what you're being proposed, right? But rather than put this off and not let it pass tonight, I would like to offer, if the board's willing, for y'all to maybe go back and see if there's things you can tweak. You heard Commissioner Fowler make some statements and everything. I think the neighbors stated that they weren't there yet, but they were close to being there. So maybe go back and have another meeting with them and meet with Commissioner Fowler and see if there's a way for you to get there. And if not, then maybe right now is just not the right time to move forward. I do agree that the changes being made with not coming out onto Oleander and the house is only accessing it, and who wants to live behind a car dealership? I wouldn't want to. So for me, a lot of the townhouses in that area, it needs to be townhouses. But then you have to be mindful of the houses that back to the houses back in Oleander. So I don't think you're there yet. My suggestion would be, that you try to pull this and go back and try to have some more conversations and make that decision at this time.
Leah, quick question. When we met most recently, I had asked you to have them be thinking about whether, instead of doing the fee in lieu of and putting into that treatment fund, and instead the reduction in units. Where do they stand on that?
Sure, I can let excuse me, Jeff come up and speak a little bit more to the units. I did, bring up a little bit of the preservation and really taking that time to look at what the quality habitat is and where it's shown. To that point, there might be down the road potential lots to be shifted, rearranged, or just relocating some of that vegetation. So I will let Jeff come up and speak on the lot density right now.
Madam Chair, before they do that, I do have another question because I think this is important. I see Dan back there. I don't know if Patrick's still here. A concern, and I know it's a concern for everybody, is those roads that are not to standard. I see Dan. Do you know if any of those roads are in the 5-year plan to be repaved and anything done to them?
Good evening, Chair Fowler, Commissioner. We do not have any of those roads in the 5-year plan. We do have some sidewalk projects that are in the early stages south of Midway on Oleander, but that's it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that to be clarified. Thank you.
So I stand by my motion to deny. We get a second and get a roll call, that'd be good.
So as far as the mitigation goes, one of the slides that Leah had presented was something that we talked to staff about, was incorporating some mature native trees on the lots themselves, which account towards that mitigation. I mean, obviously, when you're raising the site and you're bringing the elevations of the entire setup, it's very hard to keep these trees in place. We were open to the idea of working with staff to relocate trees, to shift lots around, to create some open spaces. That would all be something that would happen during the site planning process. Commissioner Towns, I respect what you offered. We put a lot of effort into it. What I'm hearing is that the commission, some of the comments have been looking for larger lots, acre lots, this and that. I mean, the bottom line is we are only 8 units higher than what the current density would allow. And if we're looking for acre lots or larger lots, I mean, straight zoning is the way to go. And some of the things that we talked about tonight will be part of that plan. That's not something that we would go forward with at this point, but we would explore a straight zoning site plan in the later, at a future date, and it would be a completely different plan, and obviously it would follow the guidelines of the current zoning. So, as much as I appreciate the offer, we hear you, but we put, with the amount of time and effort we put in there, I don't think we could accommodate some of the things that I'm hearing tonight. So we'd appreciate it if you take it to vote. Thank you, though.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, can I have you call the roll?
Commissioner Townsend?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowry?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes, ma'am.
And Commissioner Classby?
Yes, ma'am. You missed one.
One more.
Madam Secretary, you got one more, the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Fowler?
Yes, ma'am. All right, and with that, project is not approved.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'll be joined by Irene Settlemeyer, Senior Planner with our team, to present agenda item 11A2, which is also a quasi-judicial hearing for a proposed zoning atlas amendment for a site on the west side of South 25th Street from the AR1 Agricultural Residential zoning district to the RS2 Residential Single Family 2.
Thank you, Corey. And really quick, this is quasi-judicial. If I could do that really quick before we get rolling. Commissioner Classby?
I've met with staff, the applicant, and members of the public.
Staff. Residents, Ben and Corey, and the applicant's engineer on record.
Staff, applicant, and residents.
Staff and residents.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Board of County Commissioners. Irene Settlemeyer, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. So this 5.7 acre parcel on South 25th Street is about a mile, the way the crow flies or the way an osprey flies, but about 2.4 miles from the site we just discussed on the other side of the river. The request, as Corey mentioned, is to rezone the property from AR1 to RS2 on 5.7 acres on South 25th Street. The meeting was properly noticed. We received one email yesterday, which was distributed on the dais this evening from the owner of the lot adjacent to the north, raising concerns and questions about the requested rezoning. So the subject site is about a third of a mile south of Midway Road on the southbound side of on South 25th Street, close to both the boundary of the city of Fort Pierce and the city of Port St. Lucie. Along South 25th Street, there's about a mile that separates the two jurisdictions, with that area of unincorporated St. Lucie County remaining. Beg your pardon. So the property has the residential suburban, the RS future land use designation. That's the pale but bright green area. The RU residential urban is shown in the pale yellow. We have some conservation public along the river, and the city of Port St. Lucie to the south. I forget what that's. I think it was low-density residential, up to 5 dwelling units an acre. The current zoning district is AR1. There are, back in, by 1984, this area was already transitioning from AR1. Some of the RS2, RS3, RS4 zoning districts are already reflected in the 1984 zoning map, but there is still some AR1 remaining. Most of the lots in the area are under 1 acre. There are some that are still large, but most are well under 1 acre. The proposed zoning is RS2, residential single family, up to 2 dwelling units per acre. So that's consistent with the future land use designation. You can see from that yellow, little bit greenish yellow, there's a lot of RS2 in the area. The lots along Gray Twig Lane and along Rainbow Drive, along River Hammock, they're equivalent or comparable in size to the 15,000 square feet that this zoning district permits. But most of the RS2 zoning district, the lots are larger as they exist in this area. Most of them are about a half an acre. They are also still served by on-site sewage disposal systems or septic systems, whereas a 15,000 square foot lot will require public water and wastewater services. So the purpose of the AR1 zoning district is to provide and protect an environment suitable for single-family dwellings at a max density of 1 dwelling unit per gross acre, together with such other uses as may be necessary for and compatible with very low-density rural residential surroundings. So as a staff, as a planner, I've concluded that this is not a very low-density rural area, and so perhaps AR1 zoning is not the most appropriate. The purpose of RS2 zoning district, which would an environment suitable for single-family dwellings at a maximum density of 2 dwelling units per gross acre, compatible with low-density residential surroundings. And I think that low-density residential surroundings is consistent with what exists in the area. The property is within the urban services boundary. It's well within the boundary, was in the boundary before the expansion of a couple years ago. So the staff report goes through these factors, the standards of review for amendment of the zoning atlas in a little more detail than I will this evening, but there are 10 factors that must be reviewed when considering an amendment of the zoning atlas. One, does the amendment conflict with applicable portions of the Land Development Code? Is the amendment consistent with all elements of the St. Lucie County Comp Plan? Whether and the extent to which the amendment is inconsistent with existing and proposed land uses, whether there are changed conditions that require an amendment, whether and extent to which the amendment would result in demands on public facilities, and the extent to which the amendment would exceed capacity of such public facilities, whether and the extent to which the amendment would result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment, and whether an extent to which the amendment would adversely affect property values in the area. Whether the amendment would result in an orderly and logical development pattern, whether the amendment would be in conflict with the public interest and is in harmony with purpose and interest of the Land Development Code, and any other matters that may be deemed appropriate by the Board of County Commissioners in review and consideration of the amendment. Staff believes that the amendment is not in conflict with applicable portions of the Land Development Code. It's just a rezoning. We don't have a development application before us. It would provide for 15,000 square foot lots as the minimum lot area. The maximum density is 2 dwelling units an acre, which is consistent with the RS future land use designation. I believe this project, I'll get to the map, going back to the map. There is a natural transition or a density transition, maybe from the east, where there are larger lots, to the west and the south, where there are smaller lots, and this lot represents a transition between the two. Whether there are change conditions that require an amendment. I always chuckle a little bit this one, change conditions that require an amendment. Well, there might be some that support. I haven't seen one yet that requires an amendment. But in this case, since the zoning was established in the area, the city of Port St. Lucie has extended public water lines and public wastewater lines. Midway Road has become 4 lanes. South 25th Street has become 4 lanes, and other residential development has occurred. So that's some of the change conditions. Since this zoning district was established since the AR1 was established for the property, I think the population of St. Lucie County has more than quadrupled. So there are some change conditions that might support an amendment, even if they don't require an amendment. There are water and wastewater lines available. The roadway on Midway Road and on South 25th Street are operating within the adopted levels of service, and the traffic impact of this project does not reduce that level of service. It's relatively close to some of the emergency medical facilities. There is a bus line that runs hourly both north and south along South 25th Street. So whether and the extent to which the amendment would result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment. So the rezoning by itself does not cause any adverse impacts on the natural environment. There is a code enforcement matter open on this property that alleges illegal clearing. Vegetation removal permits were obtained, but the clearing that occurred was far more extensive than what the permit's provided for. That would be a different matter than the rezoning, I think, that's before us this evening. And we're still working, the Environmental Resources Department is still working with the property owner and his environmental consultants to come up with the final plan for how the tree loss will be mitigated. Whether and the extent to which the amendment would adversely affect property values in the area, I don't think that there would be an adverse effect on property values in the area. Orderly and logical, I mentioned it. I think there's a kind of a natural transition from the larger half-acre lots to the smaller lots to the south and to the west. Whether the amendment would public interest in harmony with the purpose and interests of the Land Development Code and any other matters. So I think staff reviewed this in some depth in the staff report and believes that this proposed amendment is consistent with the standards of review. So the Planning and Zoning Commission had a public hearing on the subject petition at their February 20th, 2025 meeting. And the commission passed a motion to recommend approval by a 5-to-1 vote with one member abstaining. And that followed an earlier motion to recommend denial, which failed by a 3-to-3 vote with one member abstaining. So staff's recommendation is that the Board of County Commissioners approve the amendment of the zoning atlas, changing the zoning district from AR1 to RS2 on the 5.73 acre parcel on South 25th Street. That concludes my presentation, and I am happy to try to answer any questions you have, ably assisted by Planning Manager Mr. Benton.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Is the applicant here for
Yes.
presentation or words, comments? Sure, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Blaine Bergstresser. I'm with KMA Engineering and Surveying. I'm the engineer of record for the project representing the applicant. Oh, there you go. So as staff stated, we were approved in February of this year from P&Z. And since then, we have been working with staff to develop a site plan for the project. Currently on the screen is our site plan we are proposing. With rezoning to RS2, we would be asking for lots that are on average 102 feet wide by 150 feet deep. This would be roughly around 15,000 square feet is the minimum on these lots. As you can see, which is a little bit different and which staff brought up, we are proposing mitigation areas for the trees in the back of these lots. So if you look behind the northern lots, we have a 46-foot area that we will not be touching. We'll be preserving all trees in there, as well as planting mitigation trees, as well as saw palmettos in those areas. And then on the area to the south of that, we'll have a 43-foot tree preservation area / mitigation area, where we also will be preserving existing trees and replanting saw palmettos and new palm trees. So, and it's hard to see on the screen, but as you can see, there's a swales that we're showing in the back of the lots, a little further down, Irene. Yeah. So right there. So that would be the extent that would be the buildable areas of these lots, which roughly turns out to be about 6,500 square feet they could build on. So when you take into account the code of a 20% buildable area, you have roughly around 3,000 square feet for a footprint of a house. Just a couple items also to touch on. With this being an RS2, we will be providing a central sanitary system and water system, as well as a stormwater pond in the northwest corner to collect any drainage for the site. After we had our P&Z board meeting, we had a neighborhood meeting with the neighborhood across on the east side of 25th Street. There were some concerns that were brought up. One of them being the natural features of the site, as well as was brought up that there, as staff has stated, there was a code enforcement violation on site. What had occurred was there was a lightning strike. It was a pine forest. There was some trees that burned down. I believe the owner had some confusion with staff. They submitted for a tree removal permit and they cleared more than they were technically allowed to per the permits. Since February, we've been working with environmental staff on that to try to mitigate that and clear up the code enforcement violation. So as part of that, this is the plan that we're showing here. So as I stated, the back of the lots are going to be roughly 46 to 43 foot wide tree preservation areas. All the green that you're seeing are existing specimen trees that we're going to be preserving in those back of lots. On top of that, so this listed how many inches of pines, about 1,400 inches of pines, 462 inches of oak, 14 cabbage palms, and then we're going to relocate 16 cabbage palms in those tree mitigation areas. On top of that, we're going to be planting 11 brand new 14-foot tall pines, as well as replanting that area with saw palmetto. So this is just the west side of the site, so you can see the green, like I stated, was the trees that we're going to be preserving, and the hatched areas will be the tree mitigation area that we'll be preserving / replanting. So moving forward, as these houses are developed, we'll work it out with staff, but most likely those will be placed as a conservation easement. So the future purchasers of the lot, as they build the homes, will not be allowed to clear into that area. Like I stated, we did have a neighborhood meeting with a neighborhood across the east of us on Grand Oak Avenue. The largest concern that I took from the meeting was the existing traffic on 25th Street. So as you can see here, our project's going to be proposing only a right in and right out in the middle of the site, right where number 3 is located. So if you leave the site and you head southbound, and you want to go northbound, you're going to have to make a U-turn at where the number 1 is located on here. Vice versa, if you're coming from the south, you're going to have to make a U-turn where the number 2 is to get onto the site. So as we were working through staff, they actually asked us to do some additional traffic analysis for this project. And as part of that, we looked at our proposed driveway as well as those U-turn movements. So we went out, did trip counts to see what the existing traffic flow was, and then took into account what our project is proposing. Typically, when you do that, you look at a peak PM trips to kind of see how we're going to affect those U-turns. So based off of that, it was determined that our driveway would work and function properly. We wouldn't need any additional off-site improvements. And that in a worst-case scenario on a PM peak, that will have a queuing length, which is how many cars are going to be trying to make those U-turns, of 1 car. So kind of going off that, staff reviewed that, I believe approved that, as well as their third-party consultant, and then we worked with the engineering staff to make improvements to those existing medians, because if you go out there right now, it's not easy to make a U-turn. It's a very small radius. So in our plans that are being reviewed as part of the site plan process, we are doing improvements to those medians to make it much easier for someone to make a U-turn. So those are the 2 main items that I kind of wanted to bring up that we're working through in our site plan, and I'm glad to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Any questions this time, this gentleman? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the board on this item? Good evening.
Well, good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is David Munyon. I live at 5421 Stately Oaks in the development across the street from this development, which would be on the east side. Our biggest concern, as was just mentioned, is the U-turn issue. Ingress, egress, how these people are going to turn around. Our specific entrance into our development is already super dangerous. I mean, we've had numerous accidents, most recently a fatality. As you drive by there, you see there's a little memorial set up. So this is our big concern. AM, PM, it's a racetrack. Once people go past Publix and the schools and Calvary, it's a race to get to Midway Road. I'm not sure, maybe that's more of an enforcement issue, but it's really bad there. When you pull out of our development, it's very hard to see to the south because of the curve down by Charleston Oaks. So I see why there's accidents there. It's a tough place to pull out of. Coming in, there's not a very long turn lane to cut across. Also, when you're sitting there and you're getting ready to go blend into traffic, we have people that are actually illegally going northbound in the southbound lane and then cutting through our intersection to go northbound. So that compounds the issue there. And now we have 10 houses, 20 cars that right now designated that as the U-turn area. It's unconscionable. So I'm here just to say that for safety reasons, the traffic's already there. We have Legion Point behind Publix, 421 units, 800 people. It's not full yet, but it will be. Commissioner Fowler, as you know, you get a Publix right there. It used to be 30% in the parking lot. Now it's 100%. Full. Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy the growth is here. I mean, we just heard about the growth just east of there, which I think he said 40% is going to be taking Midway Road and heading out. I'm going to imagine they're going to turn and head south right there to get to St. Lucie West. That's adding to the traffic. Anyway, our big concern is safety. We've already had issues. We don't think it's a good idea to designate as a U-turn area. There's larger areas south of there that could be U-turn. I know we talked about even putting a no U-turn sign up there, but hard to enforce, but at least for liability's sake, we would feel better that that sign is there. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Skip LaShawn. I'm also in the neighborhood to the east where the Munions are. I want to just reiterate what Mr. Munion said here just a few minutes ago. It's a very dangerous entrance and exit into our neighborhood. It's really difficult to get in and out. And I don't understand why, if it's 5 houses or if you approve it, it's 10 houses, it's going to add, 20, 22 cars? Why do we all of a sudden need a U-turn lane? It's crazy. I mean, you got traffic running north on 25th Street. And once they get past Southern Oaks Middle School and all down there, I mean, they're 50, 60 miles an hour coming up 25th Street when we're trying to turn out. And now you're going to add people coming out from the southbound lane trying to make a U-turn into that traffic. It's a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen. As Dave said, we've already had numerous accidents there. It's a challenge to get in and out of that neighborhood. And I don't understand why adding 10 or 20 houses or whatever we're going to have there, all of a sudden we require a U-turn lane. I don't understand it. So I know Commissioner Lee, I know you've probably been in and out of our neighborhood quite a few times. It's a real dangerous situation getting in and out of there. So I don't see the need for the U-turn. That's all. Thank you.
Madam Chair, sir, can I have you spell your last name, please? The secretary?
Sorry.
That's okay, just spell it for her.
Lyshon.
Thank you.
And the real name is Joseph.
All right, anyone else? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close public comment. And also just want to point out that we also received an email that the team left in front of us from Keith Lasky. So I'll just read this in real quick. We have many concerns in regard to the potential rezoning of this particular parcel. There have already been increased flooding to my yard and private drive. The smaller lot size is not in keeping with the neighborhood aesthetic. The potential for rental homes to decrease his property value. And those are the main things as they pertain to development. So I have a couple comments. this is a rezone. We have a lot of leniency on a rezone. 10 houses is not a lot. I get it. It really isn't. However, while I'm talking, Corey, could you pull up Google Maps for me so we can kind of look at the all the medians between Midway and, say, Grand Oaks here, just so I can speak to that. So I do live right off of St. James, just south of this. I have met with the neighbors, the residents. I have gone over and seen what they're referring to in terms of lack of visibility. And I'm sure it wasn't bad before St. James was, widened into 2 lanes each way. But there is, now that that road goes all the way up to their landscape and wall, your front end of your vehicle really is over that line to try to see north and south of what's coming. Furthermore,
Madam Chair, are you seeking an aerial
could you
of
do
the
an
various
aerial?
medians?
Yes. Okay, perfect. Actually, if you could stop right there, Corey. So the U-turn movement there in front of Southern Oaks, you can see what a sharp point those medians come to. Okay, for context, I have a Ford Explorer, and for me to make a U-turn there, I have to pull all the way forward and make sure I'm using either an ingress or egress lane, otherwise my tire is hitting the curb. So your U-turn movements, and in this area, you can see there's a lot of medians, there's a lot of cuts. When I tell you, you have traffic coming from all directions, coming out from the east side, going north, coming from the east side, trying to flip out and go south. You also have a black pickup truck that lives off of this road that, to Mr. Munyon's point, likes to go in the wrong direction of traffic and also blow his train horn, and I'm gonna get him one morning. Don't you think I'm not gonna have the sheriff's office out there. But it really truly is dangerous. One of the things that I had even asked or suggested is, getting rid of the median and, putting in, what we call suicide lanes, but in trying to help the movement. Here's my problem. We are spending so much time looking at the flow of traffic, which technically doesn't even come before us, right? Because this is just a minor site plan. The only thing really before us today is the rezone. I feel like so much time has been expended to try to accommodate these 5 extra homes. So I took a look, and yes, there is RS2 in the vicinity. However, I used our measuring tool that Corey I picked up on as he's been in my office over the years, and the adjacent RS2s are still not as dense as what this would be. So these 10 homes, if approved on 5.83 acres, comes to a density of 1.71. Whereas all the other RS2s in that area are anywhere from 1.08 density to a 1.54 density. So it would still be denser than the RS2s that are current in the area. The other issue, the other points I take issue with under standards of review, section E, whether and the extent to which the proposed amendment would result in demands on public facilities, skip forward, transportation, drainage. So we already know there's an issue with the flow of traffic, movement, transportation. But if we fast forward also to drainage, this page 13 of 15, the soil on site has been identified as 100% nettles and Oldsmar sands. This is a poorly drained, nearly level soil found in areas of broad flatwoods. The water table is typically at a depth of 10 inches for 2 to 4 months during wet seasons, and at a depth of 10 to 40 inches for 6 months or longer in most years. So if you live in this area, you are very familiar, as most places in my district because of the river, there is a flooding issue. And so by creating and adding more impervious surfaces that's already allowed by the current zoning is only going to exacerbate the drainage issues, which means that residents are going to be impacted. So for me, for me to consider a rezone, I would need to see some benefit added, some value added to the existing residents, the surrounding area, and I'm just not seeing it with this. So unfortunately, this one also does not have my support this evening.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Clasby.
I'm also not in favor of an RS2 zoning district for a couple reasons. One of the main primary reasons is I don't live in the district, but I go past St. James an awful lot, and I have a relative that lives in that Southern Oaks, and so I've been in and out of it a ton as well over the years since high school, and it's not easy getting out. So for me, going from AR1 to RS2 pretty much doubles the amount of traffic coming out of that neighborhood. Well, there's no traffic really coming out of it now, but if you theoretically had AR1 there versus RS2, 75% of the traffic needs to go north, so they're going to have to take that U-turn. It's a unsafe traffic condition. I'm not in favor of it. I think it's actually in violation of the comp plan and land development code, creating that hazard. But in addition to that, the staff says that AR1 remains appropriate. However, average lot sizes in the area are under 1 acre. So in theory, you could have smaller lots based on that. But staff also says that the RS2's 15,000 square foot lots are smaller than those in the area, which are approximately a third of an acre. Sorry, the 1,500 square foot is a third of an acre. I'm looking at my notes here. And the average lots in the area are half of an acre. So it's not really consistent with me with the lot sizes as well. Most of the older lots in that area are already not connected to sewer. Lot sizes are not consistent with the land development code or the comp plan, so I wouldn't support it either.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lowry.
I'm just going to echo everything that Commissioner Fowler and Commissioner Clasby said. Couldn't agree more. The U-turn is especially concerning. I was just on St. James. Well, I'm on that road a lot, and yesterday was going, I think, 40, maybe a little above the 35, and I had someone flying down past me at like 65 miles an hour. There are also 3 schools. The traffic is horrendous as it is, and just not real confident that it's a good idea to rezone.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good view here. If you see all the medians and the cut-throughs, I mean, it is craziness that occurs there. And then just to add some more context is the school board, I had them reach out to me as well a couple of weeks ago on a different matter, but they are looking, because of the issues between that stretch where the school is, Calvary and Southern Oaks Middle there, and Midway, I mean, they're asking if there's going to be any lights put in, a roundabout, anything to slow people and traffic, down. So it's definitely a problematic area.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lee.
I reiterate everything everybody says. The big issue I have is the traffic getting in and going out. It is very dangerous if you're trying to do a U-turn there, you have the cars coming around that corner. It gives you very little time to see them, and especially during heavy traffic hours, I think it's going to be very, very dangerous. Do I think 5 extra homes is going to make a difference? No. I just think it's going to be dangerous, no whether it's 5 or whether it's 10. And I think we need to figure out some way to get in and out of that subdivision without creating any issues. And right now, I don't see that. So I can't support this project as it is.
All right. Anyone else?
I don't need to say anything.
I was
mean,
gonna-
that's
yeah,
all been
you're
said.
good.
I'm
Is
surprised that
there-
we brought up the church and the church traffic, because that's crazy coming out of there, too.
Yes, it is. They just added a turn lane too, got done
Yeah.
turning a turn lane. So, I mean, I have the gavel, so I can't make a motion,
I'd
but
like
I
to
would
make a
pass
motion.
it, but okay. good.
Unless
Madam Chair,
you'd
I
like
think
to.
he wants to say something.
Absolutely.
So, I hear all your comments, and I'm not disagreeing. We were at the neighborhood meeting, and we've worked extensively with staff on trying to make it a safer entry and exit from the neighborhood. We proposed doing a median cut. We were told that was not the safest route. I even offered to do no U-turn signs on that so it could push them further south to a more appropriate U-turn area. The one item I would like to just state is, when you look at the existing RS2 zoning that's around there, yes, they do have larger lots, but they also do not have any stormwater management ponds. They're not on a central sewer system. Those are all things that we need to provide on the land in order to, one, not negatively impact our neighbors with drainage, as well as providing a public sewer system. Now, let's say this is a project that stays AR1. Those aren't items that, if you built, let's say we could get four homes on there, a centralized stormwater system to not negatively impact the neighbors, that's not going to occur. A sanitary lift station with a public system, we would probably go on a septic tank per code. So those are just kind of items that we try to weigh when we look at the rezoning. Like I said, I understand about the lot sizes and the traffic. This is just for the rezoning. We have a site plan that's a minor, and even though it's only approved by staff, we're willing to work with them whether it comes to a reduction of lots, making them wider, looking at the traffic. Because this isn't a project where this owner is looking to build lots, then sell them off. He's actually building this for him and his family and his friends. He's trying to live all in a community. So he's very willing to work with staff on any recommendations that the board might have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hear your comments, but overall, and I hear that there wouldn't be centralized stormwater, but less homes, less concrete, less impervious surfaces, more pervious surfaces to let Mother Nature do what she does best, better than humans. So I hear you. I don't want you to think I don't appreciate all the hard work that you guys have put in. I don't want that to be overlooked. You absolutely have. But it's, I think the board is pretty unanimous on this, and I'm not going to rehash everything, but just wanted to address that one comment. So with that, is there a motion?
Did I hear that you wanted to pass the gavel to make the motion?
Sure. I will pass it to the vice chair. So I make a motion to deny this petition based upon, bear with me just a moment, based upon the fact that the proposed amendment would result in demands on public facilities, and whether or to the extent to which the proposed development would exceed the capacity of such public facilities, including and not limited to transportation facilities, sewage facilities, water supply, parks, drainage, schools, solid waste, mass transit, and emergency medical facilities.
Second.
Madam Chair, could we have a count, please?
Commissioner Townsend,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowry,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clasby,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes, ma'am.
and Vice Chair Lee.
Yes, ma'am. Motion
Thank you.
fails.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members
And
of
I'll
the
move
commission.
the chair back to order.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Corey. All right, that completes our public hearings. Now we move into our regular agenda. We have an APP Jet Center sublease.
Madam
Yes,
Chair?
thank you, Madam
Yes.
Chair.
I need to recuse myself from this next item. I have a
Understood.
personal conflict.
Understood.
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners,
Yes.
thank you for allowing us to put this on the regular agenda. APP, our Jet Center, our master leasehold at the airport, reached out to us in the last week and asked us to consider moving forward, for the board to consider moving forward with this sublease. Normally, these types of things, they're routine and they would appear on a consent item, but due to the lateness of their ask, we decided to bring it on to regular, so it was out there in the open and for you to see. It's more of a maintenance item. It's more for you guys to have situational awareness of what the master leaseholder is doing. It's kind of a formality that this goes this way for you to see what it is. So again, normally it'd be on consent, but in this situation, we asked to put it on to regular, so that way, it was due to the fact that they had not asked in a reasonable amount of time. And I'll defer to Maite to fill in any other blanks.
George mostly covered everything. The FBO holds 2 master ground leases, which covers the majority of the developed area of the airport. This is one of the existing hangars. It's a sublease for approximately 3,600 square feet. It is just the ground sublease, so they've already purchased the structure separately. And another reason we partly put this on here is because a commissioner had to recuse themselves.
Did you do your hair?
I did not.
It looks different, right? It seems
think it's
darker,
part of our
longer. It
Halloween
looks
costume.
great. Whatever you did something different. I'm telling you. Anyway.
I did my tune, just for the record.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board on this item?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Clasby.
So I want to say that I was originally kind of shocked at the low rent rate on this, so I did a little bit of research. I found that I was able to contact one of the lease holders or potential leaseholders on this, and it brought me a lot of comfort to know that the amount shown on there was just for the land. They had to purchase the building on top of that, which was, almost $500,000, I was told. So I'd like the motion for approval of this.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
No.
If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ben, get our administrative approval update.
All right, good
close
evening,
us
Madam.
out.
Yeah. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Ben Balser, Planning and Development Services Director. For the record, this evening's presentation, it'll be brief. It's just 2 projects, and we'll be going over the administrative approvals that were approved by staff for the month of September. The first is an adjustment to the FPL North Orange Solar Energy Generation Station, which was originally approved in June of 2023. The adjustment authorized a 12-acre battery storage system within the solar collector yard to store excess solar energy, helping to balance power generation during times when sunlight is intermittent or unavailable. The battery units are less than 10 feet in height and will be located north and east of the Florida Turnpike and Minute Maid Road. Next, we have a minor adjustment to the minor site plan for the FPL Pelican Solar Generation Station, which was originally approved in August of 2023. This adjustment allows for the addition of 2 8-by-40-foot Connex boxes. These structures will serve as an office, storage, and restroom facilities for the FPL staff as well as contractors as they continue to expand these solar facilities out in our western St. Lucie County area, specifically west of Minute Maid Road. And with that, that concludes the administrative approvals for the month of September. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. All right, and with that, that brings us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Lee, anything?
I have none.
Commissioner Lowry?
None tonight, thank you.
Commissioner Clasby?
Yeah, I have a couple. So I received some feedback from my Citizens Budget Committee appointees, and I think that they're excellent Citizen Budget Committee members. They're really into efficiency and this sort of thing of county government, and they don't get bored of 7:30 in the morning meetings, which is great. I've been receiving some feedback from them that's not great. I think that, in my opinion, and from the feedback I'm getting, the board's kind of lost, the committee has kind of lost their objective of what they're doing. I was told that at the start of last budget season, not the one we're in right now preparing for, but the last one, they made a decision prior to the new commissioners' appointees going on there that they were not going to review the budget. So I'm not entirely sure what they do if they don't do that, other than listen to presentations, which is what I've been told that they've been doing. No offense, administration, but that's the feedback I'm getting. So I went ahead and took a look at, because I've served on the Citizens Budget Committee, I asked the county attorney to provide me the ordinance that created it. There was one ordinance in 91. It allowed staff to serve on it, and then in 93, staff was promptly taken off of the board. I wonder what happened there. But I just wanted to go over the intent of that committee really quick, and this is from the ordinance. The intent was to have an independent citizen perspective that could help the board identify ways to make county operations more efficient, reduce unnecessary spending, and improve accountability in how public funds are used. And I mean, I think that that's exactly what we want them to be doing. However, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this, but at the meeting just this past week, I was told they spent over an hour and a half discussing the reserves and potentially whether or not to raise reserves to 35% or what other level it may be. I would like us as a board to direct that committee to focus their attention on departmental budgets of the BOCC, similar to we all gathered in that room and kind of went line by line. I'd like some real feedback from that committee by the time we come to our budget stuff, so that way it's not the first time, but we're getting maybe even reports after each one of their meetings and their findings. I really want to put them to work, and I know that they're ready for it. That's why they signed up for it, right? Another, possible thing that we might want to consider, that board consists, I believe, of no more than 15 members. Each one of us, as commissioners, we get 2 appointees, and then constitutionals also get an appointee. So I think we should consider taking constitutionals out of that mix, and I think that we should have that group solely focus on the county's budget and not the sheriff's budget or the tax collector or clerk, that sort of thing, because that we've kind of figured out that negotiation happens kind of at the elected official level, and what information they get may not always be the most entire information. So I would like us to consider maybe modifying that board that it's only BOCC appointees and we only review BOCC departmental budgets. Just some food for thought. Obviously, we're not going to take action right now, I don't think, but just kind of wanted to share that feedback because, in my opinion, it's one of the 2 most important boards and committees that we have: planning and zoning and the budget. Code enforcement probably was in there too, but now we have a special magistrate. Another thing is I attended the City of Fort Pierce's meeting last night. They have decided to retain their city manager, and it sounded like they're giving him a 5% increase in his pay. But another item, the reason I was there was they were discussing whether or not they would extend their impact fee moratorium in the CRAs. And I am a proponent of that. I spoke in favor of it as a private citizen. And I think that this board should consider matching that moratorium in their CRA. City of Fort Pierce, FPRA, the redevelopment agency, is an area that's in desperate need of investment and development. And the county's portion of the impact fee that we collect in that area is still being collected, from my knowledge, even though they have a moratorium. It's not a significant amount of money, but it is a great marketing tool that they say, well, hey, there's no impact fee in this area. Please come here, because that's where we want targeted development. In part of our conversations with our own impact fees, I mentioned that, yes, we can adopt whatever impact fee we'd like, and then after the fact, by power of the board, we can create targeted areas of opportunities. And I think that FPRA is definitely one of those areas that should receive some consideration for us to match their moratorium and impact fees. In addition to that, at a previous meeting, we discussed, or it was brought up about closed districts and maybe having a discussion on that. I just want to disclose that after that meeting, I clarified to the county attorney and the county administrator via email that I do not want to have a discussion about shifting to closed districts whatsoever. I think that would be a terrible move, and I don't think that it's even worth risking having that conversation. So those would be my comments at this point.
All right, thank you. I did want to share that this week I did meet with Congressman Brian Mast, and we had a robust discussion about FEC. So we are going to be, he's going to be gathering data from across his whole entire area, as me and Courtney are providing him, and the team are providing him with a list, if you will, of all the issues that we've been having. So hopefully in true Congressman Mast style, this will be blown up very soon. He was surprised to hear that FEC was owned by El Grupo Mexico. So stay tuned for that. I did also, so it's funny you bring up about the single districts because it seems that a letter was delivered. I don't know, did everyone receive a letter in regards to that? Okay.
Yes.
The letter that I got was from the Republican Executive Committee. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna save that comment. Actually, that might not be the best comment. And last but certainly not least, I was up at the governor's dinner this past weekend. And because I know one of our local delegates has already spoken with our CFO, I also took the opportunity to extend the invitation to Blaze to come here and take a look at our budget. He asked if I thought we were ready, and I said absolutely. However, it's a win-win. Either when we get checked, we're 100% good, or if we're not, that means the residents will get something back. But so just wanted to share that with you guys. And yeah, I think that's it for me. With that, I'll segue it over, and I made sure to tell George too first before.
Give him a heart attack.
I did. I always tell on myself first, so.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll send it to you for upcoming meetings, sir.
Well, thank you. In an order of efficiency, I'll move fast. The Board of County Commissioners will hold a regular meeting on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 at 6 p.m. here in these commission chambers located at 2300 Virginia Avenue. And the Board of County Commissioners will hold their annual reorganization meeting on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025 at 9 a.m. here in these commission chambers located at 2300 Virginia Avenue. And Eric will close out with the announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. St. Lucie County, along with the cities of Fort Pierce and Port St. Lucie, are updating their stormwater master plan and encourage residents and businesses to provide input about their neighborhoods. These will be both in-person, there's one in-person and 3 virtual meetings. They will take place Tuesday, October 28th at 5:30. That is virtual. Wednesday, October 29th at 5:30 to 7:30 at the Oxbow Eco Center. Wednesday, November 5th from 5:30 to 6:30. That is via Zoom. And then Thursday, November 6th from noon to 1 p.m., and that'll be via Zoom. More information and to sign up for these in-person or the in-person or the virtual meetings can be found at stlucieco.gov/stormwaterplan. And there's also links on our homepage.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a good night, everyone.